June 2nd, just after 6:30 p.m. This is a meeting of the Medfield Zoning Board of Appeals, sitting as the Comprehensive Permit Granting Authority. Third session of the hearing with respect to the 40B project for 86 Pine Street, Binder Estates. I think that's it, Steve. Binder. Okay. Okay. There you go. So last session was April 28th, and on the two issues concerning safety and sight lines and sight distances, and the applicants engineers have been back and forth with Whitney and Steve at Tetra Tech, who are the town consultants. And so most of tonight is going to be devoted to trying to get further down the road. Still not going to have all the answers tonight to make a decision relative to the safety issues, but we'll keep moving forward in that regard. Before we start, just introduction. I'm Jack Nicholas, the chair, and the sitting voting members of the ZBA on this hearing are Christine Barton and Jared Gustafson. Bill McNiff is sitting as the alternate and fourth member participating in the process, but will not be voting unless one of us doesn't make it to the end of the process, in which case he will have substituted and voted. Also, Maria De La Fuente, Director of Land Use and Planning, who does just absolutely everything.
Including audio issues to fix now.
There we go.
IT department too.
Yes, she does absolutely everything to keep this process in line. And also we have our legal advisor, technical consultant, Attorney Paul Haverty, who is expert in all things 40B and provides us with invaluable procedural guidance, because this is not something that all of us do every day. So we want to make sure that we're doing it right. So with that, I think we should start with as there was original traffic report, and then there were comments from Tetra Tech, and there was a response to that just before the last meeting, and there were subsequent comments from Tetra Tech on the traffic report. And then on May 22nd, there was a further response from HSH from Ian. And I think we should probably start there with, getting into the record, what the issues were, what the responses are. I think just to, in a broad sense, the concerns that the board has, and also Mr. Weiner, are you here? There you are. Okay. You were sitting over there the last time. Don't do this to me. Oh, you're talking from over there. But anyway, you've apparently consulted with a traffic engineer. So at some point in the proceeding, you can share some of that. Again, I would encourage you, if you're going to have a traffic engineer involved in the process, it would be good to get them involved and be part of a three-way conversation as this all gets resolved, rather than just coming in and sort of third view. But anyway, we want to hear from everybody, because we want to get to a conclusion here. All right, so with that, Ian.
Well, thank you very much.
Steve,
Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure again. So since our last meeting, we've made some progress. We did some workshops, as you had mentioned, with both Courtney and Ian and myself and Deb, and we went over the concerns of the board and some of the things. And I'm happy to say that after reworking some of the information that we had and getting the grades and distances and addressing some of the comments that the board made, the numbers came back even better. The sightline distances were improved based on the proposed changes to site triangle and the different elevations of roadway, et cetera, et cetera. So, we were very excited to see the results of those studies. Deb's not here right now, but
She's behind.
oh, she is. Right. Oh, here you go. You're usually over here. See, I'm like John, I'm all messed up. So, all right, so anyway, I'll turn it over to Ian and we'll get to it and we'll get through it. So, it sounds like there might be a few things that Tetra Tech would like from us again. And that's okay. We can provide that information, but I think we're headed down a good path with the safety issues.
All right, thank you. Good evening, members. Ian McKinnon for the record, probably sign Hudson. And so what I'm going to do now, I think what would be helpful is to go through that supplementary information document that we provided for the peer review and go through kind of where we are with sort of the site plan and sort of the site distance item that we've been discussing. So, and then if we can also address, there's a couple other items we've kind of been items that we've been tracking, and we have updated responses as well that we can talk on related to site circulation and site design. So I think the first item that we have been looking at most closely about is the stopping site distance, and that was again updated in the sense to reflect the profile of the road. As we mentioned last time, Tetra Tech had requested that we update based on the actual center line grade and profile of the road, because that has some impact on the stopping site distance. And so those numbers have been updated, and those are calculated on a 5.6% grade heading northbound or towards the site. That would be on sort of the site adjacent side of Plain Street, and then southbound has a 2.5%. So those calculations were updated the same 30.
Just for clarification in my mind, because every time I read this, I'm thinking south north, because I'm standing on the lot and I think I'm looking north and I'm not. So traveling north is going toward 27, traveling south is going towards.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I'll use that. So the updated measured stopping site distance after the required minimums were updated is 275 feet, measured 269 feet calculated. And I can go into a little bit more about that calculation, because I know that's something that we wanted to explain a little bit further on how we arrived at those numbers. And then the second part, heading southbound, that would be away from 27, that new required minimum is 238. The measure has not changed. So to go into a little bit more detail on that, there was some calculations that were provided as part of this. And so those, I don't have the page numbers in front of you, but it's Appendix A. There's two parts of the stopping site distance calculation. There's the reaction distance, which is the time it takes for someone to identify and respond to a potential stopping or any sort of condition that requires them to take a maneuver. And then there's the actual braking distance. And so those are two different calculations. The latter half, the braking distance part, is the one that's impacted by the grade, because that's something where if you're on down slope, obviously it takes a little bit longer to stop, just due to the deceleration. And so there's an updated calculation there. There's a change in elevation. All of those feed into a calculation of 269 feet, which is very close to the 6%, which comes out of the AASHTO Green Book, which is sort of at the bottom there. For 35 miles an hour, the 6% downgrade is 271. A little less than that. I can go into a little bit more about how we arrived at the measure. So there is a site plan. If you want to bring that up. Yeah.
Maria, could you bring up the site plan, please?
The one in the memo?
Yeah, if you could actually bring up, I think it's Appendix B. Yep. So you'll notice that measured distance is longer this time around. So there has been some design revisions of work within the town right of way to achieve that. So we've redesigned an area within the public right of way, largely in front of the opposite Briar Hill Road.
Sorry, could you give it just a second? Just so the public can follow. So I can take notes.
May 26th.
Okay.
Oh, May 26th. Yep. Look on. Yeah. There you go. You're not the appendices.
Yeah, oh, that's the additional slope. All right, okay.
Can you zoom in sort of up? Maybe? Yeah. There you go.
There.
Yeah, scroll. The other way, yeah. So you'll see here, there's some notes that says proposed riprap slope within Plain Street right of way. What this is doing is providing that clear sight line. So there's a sort of an existing knoll within the unpaved shoulder within the town right of way. That's proposed to be modified to extend that distance, that sight distance here. So that gives you additional horizontal and vertical sight distance. I don't know. Deb, you want to comment anymore?
Oh, that sounds correct, and you can see it a little bit on the profile that's just below the plan. Where you can, we sort of try to identify and run the profile. You can see where it kind of dips up. That dashed line is showing that shoulder grade. So, and then we're showing proposed shoulder grading, so that we're providing that some distance.
So is what you're saying that DPW has proposed the,
This team has proposed the
okay,
modifications to it. Yeah.
So these figures are based upon your doing
Yep.
a certain amount of work in the public way.
Taking out the hump, basically that little hump that's right there, it's not on the profile, we take that out.
So you see the black
It's in
line,
the- It's between the improved portion of the way to the road layout, not on private property, it's just on public town property in the shoulder.
What would be required for you to be able to, as private contractors, to do work removing things or changing the grade of a public way?
Well, just working with the DPW, as long as your comprehensive permit allows it, then you get the DPW. Just that particular shoulder, but the public way. Just like putting up signs, like we offer mitigation to put up signs, we offer mitigation to put up, to do tree trimming of limbs if they're hanging over, same routine, we do it in coordination with the DPW, right? Yeah.
and so where in the appendix A, where you come down with the 271 feet based upon your calculations, where does that translate into your table? 'Cause I don't see a 271 feet in the
the
table.
calculated is 269. There's a table in the actual green book for the round 6%. We're actually below 6%, so that's why it's a little bit lower. Yeah, that's the table. Maria's pulling it up on the screen. With below there.
That's the difference between a 6% grade and a 5.6, right?
Yes, exactly.
2 feet. I mean, it doesn't.
So the grade is actually steeper going towards Walpole
Correct.
than the
Yeah.
exact same grade coming from the same spot, coming the other way towards
It's
27.
much more level side.
So the road is like this.
No, it's coming from 26. It's flatter coming to the proposed driveway than it is coming from Walpole.
Based on the crest of the hump.
If you can go, Maria, if you could
The
go
road,
back.
but the road itself is flat on both sides. Level on both sides, not, I mean, width wise, it's level,
Right.
it's based
Well,
on crest,
right.
one side,
Right,
one
yeah.
side.
So you can see how these two
Use
lines,
the longer.
one's steeper than the other. So that dividing line, the middle line right there, on the left of that, you can see there's quite a steep line heading up. That represents the sight line on the left. And then the one on the right represents the sight line on the right. But the second line below that represents the roadway profile or the road elevations. And so the one on the right shows that you're actually coming down, the 5.6% grade, whereas on the right, it's kind of like a low point, but then it kind of comes up a little bit. It's much flatter on the right side, and that's looking right. And what that means is we can see further heading north.
Yeah, I guess that's not translating in my head based upon what's here. Because Plain Street southbound, it's saying there's a 5.6% grade if you're traveling southbound.
It's
So it's going up the hill.
correct.
It should be
but
up the hill
but
and
we're
down the
looking-
hill, I would
But
think.
we're
the same.
concerned about the vehicle coming at us from the northbound side. Because that's the vehicle that we have to yield to.
Because if you're pulling out, you're looking
Pulling
to the
out, we're
left.
looking left.
Yeah.
Someone
You'd be
coming.
going
Right.
southbound, but the car that's driving is coming northbound.
Any other questions on?
So just to level set, the 269 required has been increased because of the grade. The original formula just had a 0% grade, but then the measured distance is greater
can
because
achieve
of
Based
what?
on the improvements that within the town right away. Generally speaking, we have not moved the driveway beyond the first iteration where we combine the two legs of the driveway.
Adjusting the shoulder to make it level with the approved portion of the bulk way.
And there are further details about, we're proposing, no landscaping or vegetation, the signage within that's not going to be within that, proposed view angles heading south. So those will need to be, maintained below 3.5 feet in perpetuity. So it's not obscuring. And same thing with snow and other accumulation, shoulder. Any other questions?
Just one, at
Sure.
the top, your header on, it says calculations looking left southbound Plain Street, but then on the second page, it says calculations looking right southbound Plain Street. Should that one be northbound?
Yes.
Okay. The second page should be northbound.
All right.
So the figures in your May 22nd response on page 2 that we've just been talking about are the final figures
They supersede the other ones, yes.
superseding any others that have been presented in various iterations, and that's because of the proposed, in other words, those aren't existing figures in the conditions right now. It's based upon proposed work to be done if it's allowed in the comprehensive permit in the roadway to change the grade, essentially. Do those figures also require removal of trees, walls, vegetation,
Just,
telephone poles, other things?
I don't think they require much at all. There's some stuff on our property that will take out walls. There's like the existing stone wall, but it's not very high. Not the way anyway, but nothing in the public way that I know of, right?
No, there's two trees.
Oh, it's 2 trees, that's right. The
that
2
we
trees we
identified
identified
on-
last time. Yeah, so we asked people, that's correct.
Yeah.
2 trees. But anything else, any of the other adjustments would be on our property in the front. I do think we talked about the wall that we're proposing and then taking out the wall that was there. But nothing's very high. It's well below 3.5 feet.
So where you're proposing to, I don't want to say shave off, that's probably not the right word. To create that sightline distance, it's just on the side of the road, right? You're not gonna actually be regrading that,
Just on the shoulder.
just on the shoulder,
Don't
okay?
touch the
To
asphalt
create,
at all.
yeah, to create
Yeah.
that
Yep.
sightline distance.
Yeah.
And are there any
Yeah.
stone walls or trees or anything in that area?
No, I don't think, there was no stone walls. I know that.
No stone walls. I would have to look at the plan as to see where those two trees that you identified
Okay.
were located.
And understanding that it's in the right of way, which no individual property owner has any control over. But the shaving, to use your term, because I like that, that's essentially what you're doing.
Mhm.
Is that located in the right of way in front of your property or the neighboring property?
No,
Or both?
it's located in front of the neighboring property.
How far from the driveway, or the proposed driveway would it be?
Our proposed driveway?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. How far away is that?
It is
See the numbers.
about 200 feet.
200 feet, yeah.
Yeah. You can see on the plan, it's labeled.
25.
those numbers that say 2+0, that's 200 feet away.
Um,
So this is the stone wall, the tree, one of the trees is here.
Yep. That's in front of us.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I believe there's a 14-inch tree, and that would be right in front of the
Here?
where we're grading, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that's what that other tree is, then.
Mhm.
Good.
Okay, so this is,
Good thing.
so there's a tree by the shoulder to be graded.
Mhm.
That's a 14-inch. And how much of the shoulder, like what's the length of shoulder you're regrading?
That's a good question, Deb. What do we think?
I would, I mean.
Probably go 50 feet.
I was gonna say 50 feet.
50?
About station 225. Station. 175. Go 50 feet.
That's what we talked about.
Thank you.
okay, so don't go anywhere. We can turn it over to Courtney or I know she's reviewed. We don't have a written response yet from Tetra Tech to your latest submittal. So what that will be forthcoming at some point, but Courtney, I believe, has reviewed this to the extent that she can comment on your comments, and then we can have some back and forth to enlighten the board.
Thank you, Mr.
That's one
Chair.
more question before we move to Courtney.
Sure.
So your original report, you had site distance, we talked about this a little bit last time, just a level set. The site distance, but you also had an intersection site distance.
Yes.
So now we only have the site distance data. What's going on with the intersection? It's a different requirement, right?
It's not a requirement.
Yeah.
It's something that's desirable.
Yeah.
But it's not a requirement.
So have those figures,
So there is no update to intersection site distance. It's just the,
so the numbers from the original report would still be the same,
those are just calculations, in terms of the number of feet vertical, sort of that is desirable.
Yeah.
As opposed to the minimum stopping site distance is what's actually required.
Yeah.
Like applicable, that's.
But wouldn't the desired, I understand it's not a regulation, but the desired amount would actually increase because now we have a grade that we're taking into account, which the original report was not taking into account any grade. So for the intersection, the
So
desired amount would increase, correct?
correct.
But though we don't have those new figures.
They're not applicable to.
Yeah.
Site distances are what applicable. That's what we're focused on.
But we can still ask,
Of course, you can ask anything you like.
okay? Because I think we will come back to that. Because I think Courtney may raise that as well. Or, anyway, so we have Courtney there.
Yes, can you hear me?
There you are. We can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr.
You know
Chair.
that little triangular box on the table?
Yes,
There
Right in front of
you are. There you are.
perfect. Thank you, Maria. Maria did some troubleshooting for the audio, so I'm glad it worked out. To add on to the question that was just asked, the intersection site distance is the distance needed for a driver on the main line to perceive and react to the vehicle's driver exiting the site driveway, so that it does not have to reduce its speed to more than 70% of what it's traveling at. So that's why it's considered kind of more of a convenience-based criteria. The calculation would not change because it doesn't take into account grade and along the main road, and the grade on the site driveway is relatively flat. So the calculation would still be the 1.47 times 7.5 times the 35 miles an hour. So hopefully that helps address that question there. The minimum for safety is that the intersection site distance and stopping site distance at least equal the calculation for the stopping site distance, which does take into account the main road grade, which Ian had mentioned. One thing that we would still be looking for from the applicant is the stopping site distance plan and profile. What we received was solely the intersection site distance plan and profiles, and they are measured differently. The object height is 2 feet off the ground at the site driveway. It is also measured at the edge of the road. So while the sight line may not go into that vegetated area and that elevated grade area, it still might be a little tricky. So we'd want them to demonstrate on the plans that vertically and horizontally, there's adequate stopping site distance. Additionally, we were looking for the stopping site distance horizontal. Those are what we call the plans. When we say plan and profiles, the profiles are vertical, the plans are horizontal in both directions, because according to AASHTO guidelines, you need to be able to see the entirety of the travel lane along the main road. And because there's a bend coming from the north heading southbound, there's a horizontal bend, and the vegetation, utility poles, all those obstructions abut immediately adjacent to the edge of the pavement. So we'd want to see the triangle, so that you can see what the potential vegetation clearing, and if there's any large diameter trees or utility poles that need to be relocated within the triangle on the west side. That would be page north from what you're looking at right now. So we would be looking for more detailed analysis on the site distance.
Can you provide that, Ian?
We can go ahead.
Okay. Courtney, is there anything else that you'll be looking for from Howard Stein Hudson in terms of information for this safety analysis?
I think that is the biggest piece. We're still going through the report and making our comments. When we did speak with the applicant and their consultants a couple weeks ago, they indicated that they had not yet received written confirmation from the fire department. I believe that was also in the letter that they submitted from May 22nd. I don't know if there are any updates from that, because there were some dead end locations internal to the site, as well as the ladder truck would need to enter the opposing travel lane and could when exiting to the right out of the site driveway, and we need to make sure that they were okay with that, because sight lines could be a little bit of an issue, especially when leaving. The trucks don't usually have their emergency lights turned on. So Ian or Steve, I don't know if you have any updates.
No, we've been double teaming the fire department, both Maria and I, and we have not got a response. So other than the verbal, he said he was fine with it.
Yeah,
We'll have it ready.
I confirmed with him, I saw him last week and he confirmed again verbally that, while, the previous fire chief, indicated that he was okay with the road, the length of the road, he was a little hesitant, but because this project came through the previous, fire chief's desk first, he would, respect his, opinion that it was fine and they can absolutely make it work. And I just asked him to please send me a confirmation, and he said that he will have it ready this week. So you will get something in writing. I am so sorry about that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Maria. And the other thing were the narrow distances at certain locations along Plain Street. And I think the applicant had verbally told us a response to that, and then provided some measurements in their latest memo. I don't know if the board would like to discuss the options there.
Sure.
Sure.
Ian, I don't know if you want to kind of
Sure.
down a
So
bit.
I can, that was actually one of the next items here. So this is on page 3 of the most recent May 22nd letter. Yep, page 3, Plain Street width. So there was a previous request to identify locations between 27 and the Walpole Town line where the minimum roadway width may fall under 18 feet. And we were asked to evaluate, if we could provide measurements at various places, between those two places. Within discussion with Tetra Tech, one of the things that came up in that discussion was that the area next to the Medfield Community Gardens often has people parking in the shoulder. And that might be an area of concern, given that there is a lot of activity there. I just drove by tonight and there were several people parked there today. So that was the area that we decided might be helpful to provide some additional measurements. So those are provided in appendix, it's D. So various points along the community gardens. And so what we propose is to provide, should the town agree, provide a gravel parking area, because the concern being that there is, unsafe parking happening on the shoulder there. And so the thought would be, let's give some area here to allow parking to occur off the shoulder in more of a safer place that might be on site, so that that activity doesn't happen on the street itself. So that would be a way of that. And this is half a mile, I would say. I mean, I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but I can find that number. But
You're talking
it's
about mile.
it's nowhere near the project drive. So
The town of Medfield owns the community garden. Who owns the community garden? It's not
No
a-
idea.
It's Care Custody Control Conservation Commission,
Okay,
so they would have to approve.
yeah, so it's
it is a third.
It's what?
less than a mile.
I mean, it appears from the plan that the
The
actual paved width is between what, 18 and 19 feet, pretty much
so roughly
the length of the street.
Consistent with, basically, consistent with the rest of the road. It's not
Right.
that, it's not the road, it's not the improved portion of the road layout, it's the use, it's the parking on the shoulder.
Right.
It's created a problem.
But how would that necessarily affect what you're proposing to do with the site?
I don't understand how it would affect us in any way, shape or form. It happened to be an issue that seems to have been brought up by the neighbors, so we decided that if in fact it was allowed, we would be happy to have a machine go down there and lay ground. Something exactly on back.
Hey. We don't conduct the in-person meeting this way, okay? We'll have an opportunity to speak and anything will come through the board, okay?
I think I guess I have to say that it does seem to be that it's inappropriate for the applicant to be held to, mitigate a traffic issue that's been in existence for quite a long time. That's a third of a mile from our project. However, we have made the proposal that we try to help the town mitigate that traffic issue, and that's the best I can do on that issue.
Okay.
I think the concern is more just the narrowness of the street, so in like the report. April 25th, the three crashes along that way, where two of them were because one was sideswiped by a dirt bike near the community garden. And there was another one where two vehicles traveling in opposite directions kind of collided, mirrors. So I think really it's just the narrowness of the road and then the increased traffic from the development. So that's just the concern.
Yeah, I can understand that the road, is certainly not ideal under today's standards, for sure, but I think that when you look at the impact that this project will have on that road and HSH's opinion that the vehicle trip count is not going to have, it's going to be a negligible impact on the width of the road, use of the road as it relates to the width. The fact that the road is as wide as it is unfortunate for the town. But at the end of the day, the cars that this project will put on that road will have a negligible impact. And then accidents we're talking about are again, a third of a mile and even further away from this particular proposed drive.
But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but I think the standard is that, you know, if it's a pre-existing condition, then there's not much
That's correct.
for us to deal with. It's when you're creating a new condition, such as the 20-foot driveway, which is effectively a road since it's wider than the public way that's there, or at least the paved portion of it.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
That's really where our focus is.
Yeah, and I don't even know from a planning perspective, if like that, you know, I mean, a lot of it's conservation land, if in like our master plan that road can be widened somehow, we maybe try to apply for any grants or things like that, but that might just be like a long-term,
Yeah,
something
and
that we can think long-term in our master plan of. We apply for a grant to maybe,
I believe that there are not many grants for widening roads, because a lot of times that requires having to do a assessment on how much private property you may be taking, and even when there's grants to provide sidewalks to kids to walk to school, they don't cover that portion. So it would be something that the town might have to undertake on their own, but I'm happy to give it a look and see what we can do in general to improve conditions.
yeah. Just, you know, if these houses do come in,
Yeah,
it's just part of, you know, developing housing and then just road widening.
general safety,
Yeah,
I'll make a note.
That also sort of presupposes that, you know, at least the existing residents of the street would want it widened.
mhm.
I mean, I get a real sense from the communications we've gotten that everybody kind of likes it the way it is. Is that fair to say?
It's a scenic road,
Yeah,
so that
yeah.
it would be taking away the whole scenic road, but
That's a question to Paul, because we had kind of brought up the distance. When we look at a project like this, is there a distance component? I know if something's pre-existing, we kind of have to not really look at that, but if something's a mile away or 2 miles away or 500 yards away, at what point do we say, or is there, or will we have to go by and say, well, that's really not, has that anything to do with this particular project, because it's miles away?
Yeah, there's definitely nothing hard and fast, but what you have to do is take a look at whether or not there is an issue that is actually either being created by the project or being exacerbated by the project. And the further away you get, obviously, the less likely it is that it's being exacerbated.
No clear cut rule, or you haven't seen things in the past where.
No.
Because I've seen, you know, they've been talking about, you know, issues down by 27 and Plain Street, and that's gotta be a mile away, I would think.
Mr. Chair, just want to let you know that we have some hands raised also on the chat for whenever you wish to address public comment. I just wanted to make sure that people know that the board will open for comments at the time that the board deems
Yep.
different.
Marie, I'm sorry, point of clarification, I thought this was an in-person only. Did I make a
Hybrid,
mistake? Oh, it's hybrid.
yes,
Hybrid.
we strongly prefer that the applicant team is here in person. It facilitates a lot of discussions.
So at the last meeting, I thought we made a decision that the meetings going forward would be in person only. I wasn't aware that there were people on the television, so to speak, but my mistake.
Sorry if I didn't make that clear. I think it's Medfield town policy to not have totally in-person meetings.
For
I would
accessibility.
prefer to be remote, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Very happy to be remote, but understood.
All right,
Would you like me to pick up?
The next.
yeah, Courtney, do you have anything further on these issues?
No, that's it for me.
Okay. Don't go anywhere.
Stay right here.
So moving back to page 2, I just want to make sure we don't skip anything. There was a comment at the last CBA hearing to understand the stopping site distance required with the addition of the potential new school bus shelters.
School bus, yep.
So there is again, another figure that's provided there. I think generally speaking, school bus drivers sit at a higher visibility standpoint, so they're gonna have a longer time to perceive and react. Obviously, a bus stops slower, but they're gonna be able to see it. So they're positioned higher. So there is a figure that's provided that demonstrates that. Which is appendix C.
Appendix C.
Yep. So you're gonna also, if you're a vehicle behind, that would be if you were the bus driver. Right? They can see something, just like any truck can see something. But a bus that was physically stopped is a higher vehicle. And that's what's represented in this figure here. So the rear end of a school bus is gonna be a lot easier to see.
Is this the one? Sorry.
Correct, yeah, yes,
So I think the concern that was raised is the school bus is stopped
yes,
and it stopped for a minute or two. There could be cars that are coming up behind it that then need to stop.
correct.
And there's a certain requirement for the distance for that first car. So I think the bigger concern is this 3-4 cars stop behind the school bus, not just the school bus itself. So this calculation is just the bus.
Correct. But the bus is there and you'd still be able to see the cars, even if there were cars behind, like lower, sitting behind.
If you're coming back, right, the bus is stopped.
Yeah.
And there's 3 or 4 cars behind the bus. You come around that corner. Now there's less of a sight line, right?
Stopping distance.
Yeah.
So you'd still be able to see the bus then.
You can see the bus earlier because it's so much taller.
Yeah, but there's cars behind it, which are the
Well, that
bigger
doesn't-
issue.
But you're still gonna see the bus early. You're gonna know there's a bus there and it's time to stop. By the way, this is an existing condition. This is a bus stop already. That's bus stop. So this is not something that we're creating.
Isn't this a new bus stop?
No, it's gonna be the same bus stop that's already there.
Will be down by your driveway,
No, there's a bus stop in front of the neighbor's house right now.
Briar Hill.
Yeah.
Basically,
No,
the
not
corner.
that one. There's another one down the road. Where right next to our driveway, there's a bus stop. Right?
Yep.
We got the list of all the stops and there's a stop right
Sorry, in front of point.
there. Yeah.
It's there.
That's Briar Hill. There's a bus stop in front of the driveway to the right of our. In other words, the kids from our neighborhood and
Oh, yeah.
neighbors, they're all gonna be right there and living on bus.
So no new bus stop created is what you're saying.
I'm sorry,
No new bus stop is being
No.
created. That's what you're
not according to the information we got from the school. That's an existing bus stop. But nonetheless, I think it's important to note that, the calculation that Ian made was that based on a 9-foot height of eye from the bus, when you come up that hill, you're gonna see that bus much faster than you're gonna see. So you're gonna have more time to react. Even if there are cars behind it, I mean, sure, if there are cars all the way behind, you can see the car first. But if there's 3 or 4 cars behind it, you're still gonna have more time to react. You're gonna see the bus. It's the bus, sorry. You're gonna see the flashing red lights. Which indicates that you need to stop.
The bus is traveling northbound.
Yeah,
Always.
this is all from the northbound side. In fact,
Right.
I was concerned, I didn't know whether the bus like picked up and dropped off in different directions, but we confirmed that the bus always travels northbound. So it picks up northbound, drops off.
Okay, so if I'm coming around the corner by Briar Hill, to Jared's point.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I can see the bus in the distance, which may distract me from the 3 cars stopped behind it. If I'm going 35 miles an hour around that corner.
Yeah.
And there are 3 or 4 cars stopped behind the school bus. That, whatever the length of a car is, 10, 12 feet times 4, that reduces your sight stopping distance by 50 feet. If there's a bus stop there.
Well, I don't necessarily agree, but I'm not a traffic engineer. I think you're
Neither
gonna
am I.
see the bus at 300 feet instead of 271. And you're gonna have even more time to react. Maybe I think you're gonna still see the cars. Because it's not that much of a bend and downhill. You're coming up and you can see you'll see the bus and then they'll identify the cars and you'll be slowing down at that point. You should be slowing down if you see the red flashing lights in the bus.
I mean, I think the fact that it's an existing condition now, where that's the bus stop that's exists today, it's not gonna change, so.
Agreed. The only concern is there's more kids, so it takes longer
Yeah,
to
it
load.
makes
It
it
takes
worse.
longer to load. There's only one kid right now getting on. It's a quick on and off where there's more. I mean,
Mhm.
How many buses stop there in the course of a day?
I think there's one for the elementary school and one for the high school, middle school. Yeah, but not at every location. And obviously it's gonna change year to year.
Does anyone from the neighborhood have any answer on that? How many buses?
I don't know if there's any
still-
buses,
yeah.
because also I would just want to point out that the buses from Walpole do go the other direction. And there is a stop right over the Mount Medfield. So there are additional. buses.
Right.
But they stop at every single driveway along, so they're still gonna stop at his house.
You
They're
don't
not.
You know,
Okay. No, because I'm just thinking back to when my kids were in school, there were like 3 different buses.
Yeah, I don't.
It was like Dale Street,
There's
Wheelock.
Medfield and Walpole, so I'm not sure how many buses.
There's at least 3 different buses.
That would be going northbound.
Yeah.
And then in the afternoon, when the buses are coming back, are they still running the route the same way? So
They don't know what they told us. School department told us.
they're always stopping on the right-hand side of the road, because that's, my memory is that's where most of the houses are.
Are the Walpole buses stopping on Plain Street to pick up kids?
They're stopping in Walpole,
I'm-
which is
I-
right over the line, which is called Granite Street, but it is essentially Granite Street.
Granite Street is a couple thousand feet from our driveway. Or a third of a mile. to be that way.
Anything on this or I mean,
On the buses, I
on the buses?
think we understand the bus.
So the next item. Is related to the,
Actually, I should probably ask Courtney. Courtney, do you have any comment on the bus stop issue?
No, that's one of the items that we're still reviewing, but yeah, usually it would be the object that you need to stop at for that's flashing its lights in a case like this. If you're designing a brand new road, you would look, try to look at every part of every curve of the new roadway, but for an existing roadway, we typically just look at the where the site driveway is going.
Courtney, do you need any additional information to finalize your review of that?
For the site distance, yes, for both the vehicle, a traditional vehicle and what we refer to as the design vehicle, as well as for the school bus, we would be looking for all of the site distance plans and profiles in each direction. So right now, we just have intersection site distance, and we have the horizontal and vertical profiles for part of it, but not the entirety of what we would be looking for according to AASHTO standards.
Yeah, that's what you had referred to earlier, right? Yeah, okay,
We know what we need.
okay, great, thank you.
Just procedurally, Courtney, you'll be submitting a written response to this, the HSH May 22nd report in this conversation tonight as to
Yes.
what you need, or you just communicate that to them.
Yes, it's up to the board. We held off on submitting our response letter from the previous submittal, their first response to comments. And we met with them and Maria in a meeting so that they could have the opportunity to address some of those. So it's up to the board if you want to wait till they provide the information that we discussed tonight, or if you'd like us to issue our comment letter based on the 2 response comments letters and then have them formally respond.
I think it makes sense to wait for the
Yeah.
information and then just do one,
Makes total sense.
yeah.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, because I think what we're trying to do is to collectively keep moving forward. I mean, we're going to come to, I know we're talking traffic's pun intended, a stop sign at some point where we're going to have to decide the safety issue one way or the other. And getting to that point is in many ways kind of slowing the progress on dealing with any other issues, of which there will probably be many in this permit process. So, the sooner we can, we can do that, then we can address all of this in a comprehensive manner.
Happy to do that. I think that makes sense efficiency wise. Next. Is that it for the, oh, you have one more?
I think there was 2 or 3 more things.
Okay.
So one of the other items that was identified was the driveway itself and proximity to other driveways. So as you recall, there was a 2 curb cut design in the original proposal. And we've now provided a single full access driveway, and we've pushed that as far away to improve the sight lines. And so now this gets closer to the driveway at 82 Plain Street. And so the project conferred with DPW on what they'd like to see some sort of delineation between the 2 driveways, given that they're closer. And so their recommendation was they typically like to see fence or some sort of landscaping wall that doesn't interfere, of course, with sight lines, but just really sort of announces one driveway versus the other. And so I think what we propose now is an asphalt Cape Cod berm at the driveway, so it's very, very clearly delineates the driveway for this project versus the existing 82. Deb, is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
We did add some additional landscaping along between the 2 driveways on the subject property, just to provide a buffer. Thinking fencing is maybe not appropriate, due to slight distance lines, that landscaping would be more appropriate.
And as part of those changes, the bus shelter and the bike rack can also allow sides to the in between as well. And we'll go over a little bit more on that.
To in between between the driveway and the neighboring property.
Yeah,
Yes.
we did a turnout too. So parents can turn around or.
You will speak up a little bit. So everybody can-
Yeah, we're going to, when we get to that, but it's in another comment. right?
It is, yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah,
getting
we'll
ahead.
Mr. Chair, can I ask questions?
Yes,
So you discussed the DPW. I know that during our meeting, I had reached out to them, and that's when they said that they like to have some sort of visual barrier so people don't get confused between entryways. Were you able to have a separate meeting with them on that, or was it just the time?
Just the time.
I think DPW also wanted you to check with the building department, just in case there's anything in building code, just to cover all of our bases. If you could get it in writing, just so we have it there, I think it would be great to have an email thread and documenting that. I'm happy to facilitate that. I can get the work started, just so we cross it off the list. Yeah. And you can respond to that email, let us know what you're proposing, and just make sure that they basically sign off on that proposal.
And there won't be a mailbox, obviously, because there'll probably be individual mailbox. Is there a mailbox for the abutting property at?
Locate a mailbox.
I have to zoom into that. I don't recall, no. There it is. They have mailbox. I'm sure that they do. I just, the plan is that small, so, the zoom in to look at it.
so much distance is there between the
Driveway.
between the 2 driveways, or I guess between the driveway, the curb cut, the northern curb cut, and the boundary line to the property to the north, and then to where the driveway is. I didn't look carefully at that when we did this, so.
I can.
Go ahead, Deb, yeah.
The curb radius on the driveways is 20 feet from the property line approximately. But the radii spread out, so the curb is to the corner. So
How far would the cars be away from each other? They were both sitting in the driveways.
20 feet, say
No, more than
approximately 20 feet.
More than 20 feet. 'Cause
Yeah.
His driveway is not on the property line, so
Yeah,
25, 30 feet. Between the distance between the 2 cars. 20 feet. $15.
Then the,
Yeah, the car was over here, and then his was there.
it looks like on the plan, there's a bit of a, there's like the curb cut into the street, and then there's sort of a Y.
Yep.
Off to the side. Would that be for, I think someone mentioned at the first hearing or the second one that, kids aren't going to walk 1,000 feet particularly younger kids, to get to that bus stop, that they're gonna be driven to the end, and then where do those cars go?
Yeah,
So.
So
we're
is
gonna
that
answer
the-
that question.
yeah, we have an answer for that. We changed the driveway layout a little bit to help with the people bringing their kids down to the bus stop.
I can answer that now if you'd like.
Sure.
Yeah.
So,
Maria, can you pull up that?
yeah, if you can go to appendix E, in the site plan.
Here,
Next one, yep, now in the top left corner, if you could zoom in. Yep, right there, yep. So in this area at the driveway entrance, we proposed 2 parking spaces off the street. So this is a point where you could pull in and then do, a 3-point turn, so if somebody wanted to drop their child off, or the mail kiosk ends up over here, you could do that and not even enter Plain Street whatsoever.
Pull in, back out.
Pull in, back
out, back out.
Back up the house. Yep.
Would that be paved,
Yep, it'd be
two
a
phases?
paved, yep. So you wouldn't have to leave the site at all. The reverse direction. I think there's just one other item, if I may.
Yep.
So I know there might be some further comment from Tetra Tech on the turning analysis, but we did make 2 updates. We did revise the turning maneuvers to completely remain on the paved roadway, which was a comment that we had heard. So at this point in time, turning maneuvers suggest no additional new tree trimming, but that's something that we can look at per Courtney's comment. And then the other update is there was a comment related to the trash removal plans and the potential that trash refuge trucks may need to back down from the short street because there aren't hammerhead turnarounds at the end of these short stubby roads. And so what would be proposed here is homes on drives 2 and 3 would all be required that they roll their trash up to the main drag, so that a trash truck, if it were doing its pickup route, would just need to do one circular route. So they wouldn't actually have to do any unsafe backing up down a street.
the drive 2 is here,
Yeah.
Yes,
and drive 3 is,
Yep, that,
correct.
those 5 houses would have to just bring their barrels down.
that will be in the HOA, right?
All I had was response to comment.
Courtney, do you have any comments on any of those items?
No, thank you.
No? Okay. Jared's point earlier, because I had the same question, I want to get back to the site distances. And in the initial report, the April 25th response to comments, we laid out site distances that were based on, I think, a 0 grade, and then the site stopping distance.
Correct.
And those numbers have changed, and subject to confirmation, I think Tetra Tech's gonna want to know how you did the numbers and all. It's beyond me.
Yep.
But to be able to, advise us how you got to those numbers and the accuracy, because I think the point was raised in a letter from one of the neighbors after talking with a consultant. The numbers do keep changing, and I understand from tonight, when you factor in the grade, they're based on different things, but it's frankly not a warm fuzzy feeling when each time we meet or look at something, we're getting different numbers. When the eyeball test tells you it's safety at the site with a driveway there is going to be marginal at best. So we, from our perspective, I think really need to know, hard, accurate numbers. Final numbers, kind of like the $10,000 pyramid, final answer. The other thing is, in the original response, you then have the intersection site distance. So the stopping distance, you have a required, what, 269 feet is what we've come to at this point, and you have 276 is your current measurement based upon projected change in the grade and shaving away part of the street and the shoulder of the street, and removing vegetation and trees and potentially a telephone pole and, you know, who knows what all else. And I think Courtney may also want to see, I think she mentioned it, of, you know, vegetation plan, or, you know, basically show us exactly what's going to be removed, where it's located. Realize if it's in the public way, it doesn't matter whose property it's in front of, but, you know, and to the extent that nothing has to be removed from anyone else's property. But in this particular case, so those site distances, the stopping distance, it's a standard, right? So it's a requirement. So if you are 1 foot more site stopping distance than this requirement, AFTOS or whatever, then you meet the standard. What if you're 1 foot under? What if that 269 or your 276 gets recalculated and all is said and done and it's 268? Does that mean you don't meet the standard? So you're done?
Well, I think we went over that last time, or at the very first meeting, I think, and Paul commented on the AASHTO, you know, guidelines of the industry standards, but that doesn't mean that it's not, you know, variable within a few feet of the standard. It doesn't mean you're out of the box because you needed 269 or
Okay.
260.
Well, humor me in going over it again because
No,
it's pretty relevant.
I'm certainly not suggesting, yeah, I'm just suggesting that
So-
that was the discussion that we had. Our position is that we're exceeding whatever the AASHTO guidelines are, so I don't think we
Right.
need to worry about that, but in the sense that if we didn't, it would be up to the board and the Housing Appeals Committee to determine whether or not we applied with the standard enough to make the sightline distances safe.
So if you're just over, then you've met the standard. If you're just under, you haven't met the standard, but you're saying that at that point, then it's sort of more aspirational and it doesn't really matter that we're a couple of feet under.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that I think you still have the discretion to determine whether or not that number, although it didn't meet the standard promoted by AASHTO, whether or not that number still met the safety for that, you know, sightline distance.
Okay.
It's still within the board's purview, I believe, that they have the discretion to make that determination.
So do you feel the board has any discretion if you're just over, which you are? At least with these
I guess the
numbers?
same could be said, but I don't think the board would, I think it would be difficult for the board to maintain that position with the Housing Appeals Committee if they decided to deny a project when it met with the AASHTO standards.
You're looking for input from me?
I'm looking for input. I just want to make sure you were still here.
I think I stated last time, again, if a project meets the AASHTO standard, that is the generally accepted engineering standard, I think you would be putting yourself out on a limb to try to deny based upon a project that does meet, because I think the Housing Appeals Committee would rule against you. If it is under the AASHTO standard, I think that's less clear. I think that does indicate that there is a potential safety problem. The question would become, is there any way to mitigate that? And that would be something the board would have to review. Is there anything, I mean, I know that we're already looking at changing grades, shaving off portions of the sideline of the road to help get to the site distance that we need to get to. If we fall just under, is there anything else that the board can do to mitigate the concern? Whether it's traffic calming measures to slow the speeds or whatever it is, that it feels is sufficient to address whatever deficiency exists. We'll have to figure that out at the appropriate time.
To Paul's point, I already stated that we're meeting the ASHTO guidelines, but we're also proposing common measures. That's kind of the belts and suspenders.
Okay, so we have aspirational standards that are pretty much required under ASHTO for the site stopping distance. Or stopping site distance, I guess. So let's go back to the intersection site distance. Because there it's referred to as desired as opposed to required. And on the 85th percentile, these are based on, zero grade. I'm looking back at the original response to comments, the April 25th, 2025. And we have right turn at the driveway, so turning right and going northbound, desired is 335 feet, which I assume means the desired optimum, if you look left, you should be able to see 335 feet.
If we were building a new intersection, those are the standards that we would be using to build a branch intersection. But given the existing condition,
Major new road.
major new road, giving the existing conditions, what's applicable to the board and the comprehensive permit is the study stop and distance, not the intersection distance. Those are reserved for actually building major roadways, not for the existing conditions of a driveway entering an existing road.
Well, if it was a subdivision, it would be a road.
Either way, it's still an existing condition. So, if we were building a four-way intersection, we would try to apply.
Well, you walk me through this then, where you're building a 20-foot wide paved surface, call it a driveway or a road.
Right.
I know technically it's a driveway because it's not a subdivision,
But we're not,
but
we're intersecting an existing road, and that's the road that the intersection distances are limited, right? Because it's an existing road.
well, it says intersection site distance. So if I'm sitting in a car, yeah, I care about the number of feet that you can calculate that it takes a car coming from my left as I pull out your new driveway. I care about how long it takes the car coming at me to stop. But I care probably more about being able to see that car come.
I think the more important factor is the stopping distance, not the site, not the intersection site distance. I'll leave it to Ian to describe it. But
Yeah, and as we said, it's a desirable condition. The stopping site distance is the minimum requirement. Desirable would be great if we can accomplish that, but that's not the bare minimum requirement. And the intersection site distance doesn't take into effect any sort of the traffic conditions, not how many cars are going up and down the roadway. And it really, doesn't apply until there's high volume roadway conditions. And I think there's even language in here that in the ASHTO Green Book that talks about it's only desirable at higher volume settings to meet that desirable condition. So, it's something that is it a nice to have? Sure. But is it a requirement?
Yeah, it's not a requirement, but it's like the compounding. Stopping site distance, it's like the cumulative, even though it passes, it's, because it's so close, and this is just very technical, that's why we're relying on our peer review consultant to get all the right information so that she can do her full analysis, but it's the compounding effect of the stopping site distance and the intersection when you're gonna take a left, like those two, when it's like at a critical point, there could be an issue. So that's just what I think
that
Jack was trying to say. Even though the intersecting site is not a requirement, it's just a factor that
I think that
concerns us as well.
You're relying on your contact as your profession to guide you in this matter. And I think that I think they're likely to opine that when it comes to evaluating the safety of this particular proposed roadway, driveway onto Plain Street, the site stopping distance is going to be the factor that is most important and needs to be complied with. Yes, would it be nice to be able to see 300 feet to the left when you're pulling out? Sure, but the real safety issue is, can the car that's coming around the corner stop in time when they see you pulling out the intersection? By way of the ASHTO guidelines in Tetra Tech's opinion, I think we've complied with the safety requirements. That's all I'm saying. I think you're absolutely right. I think that, Tetra Tech is your professional. You should rely on their opinion. I feel confident that they are going to agree with Ian in this matter, and that the intersection site distances are certainly, great to have if you can, but the real factor when it comes to safety, which I think is what this board is mainly concerned with, is the site stopping distance. Whether or not we're meeting a standard of generally engineering accepted standard. Everything that we've provided so far.
Well, I think in chapter 40B, though, I mean, everything comes back to the safety, and this board, and whether it's sitting as a comprehensive permit granting authority, 40B application, or whether we're sitting on a special permit or variance request or an appeal, any of the less technical, usually month-to-month things that we do, we have an obligation, among other things, to the safety of all of the citizens of Medfield, not just the smiling faces that we're looking out at here and the neighbors, but to everybody in the town. And I believe in 40B, when it talks about balancing public safety safety concerns with our need for regional need for affordable housing, it talks about an obligation, safety obligation to the people who are going to be living. So it's going to be 24 new families with how many kids and whatever. You mentioned 226 vehicle trips a day. I respectfully disagree that that's negligible. That's 226 opportunities for someone coming 35 or 36 miles an hour around that corner who exceeds the stopping sight distance, your plan, if the numbers are totally accurate, by half a car length. There's 226 opportunities for the numbers to lie. And I guess that, that really concerns me. So.
It's 226 out. It's not 226 out, 226 in. It's half out, half in. Some are going left, some are going right. So it's not necessarily the same. It's not the 226 of the same condition that you're thinking. It's varying conditions all day long.
If there's 226 vehicle trips, that's 226 opportunities for something bad to happen.
I don't agree.
You're creating a situation that has real safety concerns, at least to me. I can't speak for Jared or Christine.
I don't
speak for
I don't
themselves.
disagree. I'm shocked that the intersection site distance seems to have not much of importance here, because my opinion is you're basically dependent on a car in Plain Street making a decision, where if you have a good intersection site distance also, no one would pull out because they would see the car coming and that person wouldn't have to make that decision. It just makes no sense to me that we wouldn't want to put as many safeguards as possible for any intersection. And to me, existing conditions, I get when it comes to safety. I think we have to be as careful as possible when it comes to this matter. And I understand what everyone's telling me here is that as long as the site distance meets the regulations, it's a tough hill to climb. No pun intended here, but I just feel like it's crazy to think that, because it happened to me, you pull out and there's a car right on you, and it just takes one time.
Yeah.
So if I may, I just want to add a little bit more on sort of the factor of safety that go into some of these numbers. So we talked about there's two different parts of the stopping sight distance. There's the perception and reaction time, and then there's actual braking. So the perception reaction time is based on actually like the 90th percentile driver. So pretty much the slowest reaction time of anybody. Most average, or the average driver is going to react a whole lot less than the 2.5 seconds. That's factored into the calculations. On the braking side, these are actually really, really old guidelines, and this braking distance is actually assuming wet conditions with brakes that fully lock up. So most vehicles that have been built in the last 50 years have anti-lock brake systems. They've been required, and they've been pretty much standard since the early 90s, and since 2012 been mandated. And so every vehicle can stop about half as much of this distance with a wet, on a wet roadway. So what this is assuming for a deceleration rate is 11.2 feet per second. If you convert that to G's, so that the deceleration rate, what's in that formula is 0.35 G's. And so a standard good tire can brake at about 0.9 G's, so almost 3 times faster on dry pavement. A totally bald tire brakes at 0.4, so it exceeds what's in this calculation already. So a totally bald tire on wet roads. So, you know, I think hopefully that can bring you some sense of at least a little bit of comfort that there's a factor of safety, like in a lot of design of all of our systems in our lives, that we are over designing things. And so I think that, in effect, that cars and the technology with them is improving. There's something else too. It's actually been, as of 2029, all light duty, every passenger car is proposed to have automatic braking. Obviously, I'm not arguing about what the standard practice is here today. Obviously, yes, it is the minimum stopping sight distance. But the fact of the matter is, all our cars are getting safer. And, you know, ultimately, that stopping sight distance hasn't caught up to what is the modern vehicle. But I'm not suggesting that we're changing the engineering here today. But hopefully that can give you a little bit more sense of peace of mind. Thank you.
So you're saying basically the AASHTO standards are 50 or 60 years old that haven't been updated?
Yeah, they don't reflect.
Even in the 7th edition, 2018, a policy on geometric design of highway and streets that's cited in here.
Yeah, most of the updates in the recent AASHTO Green Book are related to bike lanes and roundabouts and other facilities, not the core tenement of stopping sight distance.
So what can we really rely on? It's a gold standard based
Standards
upon,
are way
you're
above.
telling me engineering from
You can
50 or
rely that
60
the
years ago.
Standards are exceed the ability of modern day car.
What about other vehicles? All these numbers are calculated based upon stopping distance for standard passenger cars, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Have you done calculations for trucks, for landscaping? Trucks, I mean, there's all kinds of vehicles traveling on that road at all kinds of speeds.
So I will say that the AASHTO design guidance does not require truck design input on stopping sight distance. It is only passenger car. I will say though that, you know, generally trucks, as we all know, larger, they're heavier, they take a little bit longer to decelerate. However, they also are taller, and the driver sits up a whole lot higher, and similar to the school bus analogy I made earlier, they can see and perceive an obstacle much sooner. But they also have the same ABS requirements as well. So in a lot of cases, and because they're commercial vehicles, the requirements for heavy vehicles are actually supersede passenger cars. Because we know that they're dangerous, obviously. We don't want loads to tip over. You know, higher mass, you know. We, and I think the federal government realize that. So there's a lot more regulation behind that. And it's subject to inspections. I mean, the standards, I mean, if you look at how fast a bus can decelerate, it's actually faster than a passenger car, the stopping distance, because they have extra systems, air brake systems. And so they're mandated to brake fast. So that's why passenger cars are used in the design of roads. Obviously, there are other things related to grades and other truck parameters for highway systems. But in a scenario like this with a new driveway, the trucks do not both.
So is it fair to say then that you use the word required, met the requirement, met the minimum numerous times? That's based upon the accepted standard under AASHTO.
Correct.
That deals only with automobiles. There's no accepted standard for site stopping or stopping site distance for any other form of vehicle in the AASHTO standards. Is that correct? I mean, I take at face value what you're saying. That,
Yes.
you know, buses can stop quicker than cars. I don't know. I'm not the engineer, but what is before us? I mean, these numbers obviously are critical.
Of course.
Okay. To making some assessment of the safety conditions here. And the only thing we have before us is the industry standard for an automobile. And there are no industry standards which, if met, would essentially sustain an appeal at the Housing Appeals Committee if we were to deny the application based upon being only a few feet over the standard. But there are no standards for vehicles other than cars. Is that correct?
Stopping site distance.
Yeah.
Deals with passenger cars.
Okay.
Your expert opinion, the minimum site distance, site stopping distance sufficient for a vehicle other than a passenger vehicle, like a school bus or a truck, stop.
Yeah, given that they can see further and they sit higher. Yeah. They'll perceive the stop vehicle if there is somebody waiting at the end of this intersection, waiting for this driveway. They'll see them sooner than a passenger car.
So in your expert opinion, the calculations that we have presented to the board are sufficient to render that particular intersection safe for vehicles and for trucks and buses. Have that in mind.
You still there, Courtney?
I'm still here, but it cut out
You're
for a
still there.
second.
Okay, yeah, there you are.
Yes.
Do you have any comment, you know, relative to other vehicles other than cars and the AASHTO standard what we've
Yes,
been discussing here?
yeah, so AASHTO does have different factors that you can apply to obtain the minimum criteria, but the way that's measured is different, which is what I believe Ian was alluding to. So while the calculation might be different, so is the measurement, and that's what it would be on the plans and profiles. So you could look at both, but it's, you know, general accepted practice is the design vehicle is the primary type of vehicle on the roadway, which in this case, for both the site and Plain Street is, you know, a passenger car.
Do you have any comment? I know you're gonna do a more formal response to all of this, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have any comment with respect to the intersection site distance? You know, just as one of my favorite phrases, practicing law for years, is as a practical matter. Okay, I mean, we've got all the numbers and everything, but as Bill and I have both alluded to, you know, you're sitting and you're looking. I want to know how far I can see,
Mhm.
along with how far it takes a car to stop. Are those at all relevant? I mean, they're in the initial report, so.
Yes, they are, and yeah, site distance is a very tricky topic. So I think there might have been a little bit of confusion in the nomenclature. So there's the required distance along a travel path. And then there's the sight line measurement. So there is a desirable intersection site distance along the travel path, and that's so that a vehicle traveling along Plain Street does not have to reduce their travel speed to by down below 70% of what it was traveling at for the design speed. And the design speed we suggest, which is the generally accepted practice, is the 85th percentile travel speed when available. So that's why we asked them to look at a speed higher than the regulatory speed limit of 30 miles an hour, because the 85th percentile speed was around 35 miles per hour. The AASHTO says that the minimum for safety for the intersection sight line measurement needs to be at least equal to the calculation for stopping sight distance. So the measurement is different, which is why we're asking the applicant to provide all of the plans and profiles, because for stopping sight distance, the object is 2 feet off the road. For intersection sight distance, it's 3.5 feet off the road. Both measurements assume a driver's eye height on Plain Street of 3.5 feet. So it's the height or the elevation above, I'm sorry, the height of the object above the ground elevation at where the site driveway intersects Plain Street is the issue. So we really need all of the plans and profiles for both the measurement of stopping sight distance and the measurement for intersection sight distance. But as far as the calculation of what that distance needs to be, they both have to be at least equal to the calculation for stopping sight distance, and since that takes into account the roadway grade for the braking distance component of the calculation.
Okay. So, pardon my confusion, but this is all new stuff.
Yeah.
Well, no, and the numbers keep changing, so I'm trying to put it in perspective. But we have originally, based upon a 0% grade, we had going back to the stopping sight distance,
Mhm.
250 feet at 35 miles an hour. I got that right? Required minimum sight stopping distance, 250 feet, measured 252. Then in the updated response, May 22nd, we have at a 5.6% grade. Oh, no, I'm sorry, the other way around, the 2.5% grade. Plain Street going northbound, 269 feet required minimum, which you've explained has to do with the change in the grade and also the remedial work to improve the sight line. But then we have a measured stopping sight distance of 275 feet. So how do we get from 252 to 275? Is that as a result of the grading and the mitigation factors?
Exactly.
So you're improving, 252 is as it exists, or is 252 with removing trees and vegetation and all, but not changing the grade?
252 was the previously proposed mitigation.
Yeah.
Deb has revised the mitigation, provide for additional site distance.
Okay. Jared, Christine,
I don't have any.
Bill? Anything at the moment? Anything I'm missing at this point, Paul, before I open it up a little bit?
Can you just, Mr. Chair, repeat those numbers? 252 was the previously proposed mitigation. Now we are at
275.
No,
for
That's
the
also known
measure-
as the measure.
Yeah, measured by distance.
Thank you.
okay, want to open it up at this point then to questions or brief comments. I would ask, since this is the third hearing and, you know, at the very first hearing, we had pictures and things that were presented. You folks have provided a lot of really good information, and hopefully you can see that we've taken that all to heart and dealing with our experts, and we're trying to get to the bottom here. So I don't want to preclude discussion. I don't want to limit discussion, but I would ask that we do limit things to any new points tonight so that we're not going backwards. Okay, if anyone has something new to add or a question for the experts while we have them.
Mr. Chair, we have someone who has had their hand raised in the chat.
Okay, we'll get to them. We're gonna take care of the people that are here first. They bought the tickets. Everybody else watching on TV. There we go. Hey, you gotta maintain a little sense of humor here, folks. Otherwise, this gets all too. So if you want to speak, they need to be at a microphone or?
That little triangle is what caught it, that's the microphone, so maybe if they could come up to one of the chairs on the first level, I think that would be close enough.
Yeah.
And
And
full name and address.
name and address, please.
Fran Corbett, I'm at 92 Plain Street, which is the properties to the left, 86 and about the development. So thank you for the time. I'll comment on a few things. First, my wife Terry sent a letter to the board on Saturday. Yeah, so only 48 hours to go get it, but we just received information late in the week from the Walpole Police Department. But a traffic that was at the corner of the intersection of Kittredge and Granite Street in Walpole on April 30th, 2024, which was the first day of the traffic study. I believe was from April 30th to May 2nd, 24. And this trailer was placed there beginning that day. The officer from Walpole communicated that when they typically do this, it's requested, they'll put it somewhere and it'll stay for 2, 3, 4 days, maybe a week. So it may have been there for the entire 3 days of the traffic study. We only have confirmation of the first day and pictures of it from the first day, which were included in the letter. I don't know if you guys have copies. I have copies of.
Yes, we do.
And
you've seen that letters.
Do you know who requested to put this?
we do not know, and
They don't have a record of,
They don't have a record who requested, or they didn't share it, but our sense is that they didn't have a record who requested it. But they have a record that it was there that day,
Yeah.
and their practice is to have it be there for a few days, maybe to a week. And that is probably, I'm gonna say 1,500 feet, quarter mile-ish from the intersection where that is placed, and where the site distance spot, if you will, under consideration exists. Not sure if HSH is aware of the trailer. But its presence absolutely would have influenced the results, the speed results of the study. The objective of that trailer, plain and simple, is to make people slow down. We've all seen these things. We've all driven by them. It says 30 miles an hour speed limit. You're going 38. you're going 34, you're going 52, we all lift immediately when we see that. And so it is very likely that the speed results coming from Walpole are understated by a little to a meaningful amount. So I would ask that be considered. The 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, or judged to be the 85th percentile, 35 miles an hour. Again, that reflects or includes the influence of the trailer. And as so the required stopping distances, which as several of you have said, barely meet minimum standards, those kinds of things. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room here. So we're barely meeting those. And while they may account for slippery roads or wet roads, they don't account for, in my estimation or my understanding, any distractions to the driver from outside of the vehicle or inside of the vehicle. And you don't need much of a distraction to take up 6 feet in braking distance. Given the trailer existence, I would submit that 35 mile an hour, it probably isn't the 85th percentile. It's likely less than that. Maybe it's the 80th, maybe it's the 75th. I don't know, but it's less than the 85th. The 85th percentile might be closer to 40, if not for the impact of the trailer. Even if the 85th percentile is 35, does that mean that 15% of the traffic will not have enough room to stop? 85th percentile, 85% safety standard. I'm not going to speak for all the neighbors here, but I think they would support that's not good enough. 15% of the traffic being a problem is much more than acceptable. So that's a serious public safety threat. Second topic, on-site parking. There'll be 24 families there. That means a lot of parties, a lot of gatherings, birthday parties, graduation parties, cookouts, Super Bowl parties, etc. Where do people can park? Prairie Hill is one option. They can park in Prairie Hill, fill up the cul-de-sac, walk a quarter mile up to the location. Nobody's doing that, carrying their chicken dip. So the second option is to park on the driveway, that big long driveway. There are going to be signs that say no parking. Good luck with that. I mean, we're in Boston. Parking signs are not to be taken with.
I like the 10 suggestions.
They are just so there's suggestions. Bottom line, it's not going to take many cars parked on that driveway to make it impassable for an emergency vehicle. You showed earlier the fire truck, fire engine coming in and going out. There's plenty of room to make that turn. Well, there's enough to make that turn that can actually back out and turn around. I didn't see any cars parked in there. So I don't believe a car in there was taken into account in whether or not that happened, let alone 10 to 20 cars, 30 cars that are going to be there for a graduation party or something of the like. Same for the school bus. Great, there's 2 parking spaces. There are going to be more than 2 people driving their kids down to just 24 families. If there's an emergency at 7:30 in the morning or 2:30 in the afternoon, I hope it doesn't take a fire engine, because they're going to struggle to get in there, let alone get to the site. Lastly, recreation. 24 families, most of them, or all of them with children. I mean, I struggle to imagine moving into this development without family. Yeah, that's what this is going to be for. Where are the kids going to play? There's no clear area on property. There's no parks or playgrounds anywhere nearby. Nothing on Plain Street. nothing off on 27. There's nothing for these kids to do. They want to throw a baseball or throw a football, they're gonna do it on the main driveway. Maybe that's good enough. But they're gonna ride their bikes. Again, they're gonna ride their bikes on the driveway. They're gonna go around that circle, around the circle. And that's probably gonna be fine. Up to a certain age. When the kids are gonna say, no, this isn't cutting it, let's go to Plain Street, and Plain Street is not a safe place for kids to ride a bike. Let alone a lot of kids to ride a bike. Yeah, another serious public safety check. So you have a traffic study with tainted data, I would argue. And even with that tainted data, they barely meet the standards. 85% of the traffic. You have no on-site parking for visitors. You know there are going to be a lot of visitors at certain times or in various times. You have nowhere for kids to play elections. And you have 50 to 60 bedrooms that likely are going to be full of kids. These are real, they're credible, and they're material public safety risks added to a long list of public safety risks that have been introduced over the past 3 months. I would ask for a little leeway here and talk about 3 small things, not small things, quick things that are outside of the traffic. Those being that in addition to the public safety risks, all the waivers that are being asked for.
Well, I think I'm gonna,
If you're gonna stop me there,
Yeah,
I'll
we're gonna-
skip that. I'll
yeah,
skip
because
that.
we're not gonna get into those tonight, and I think it'd be better. You're welcome back the next time.
All right.
We'll save your seat.
Thank you for your time.
Usually Ted Cannon sits there. All right, thank you. We have any, anything you want to respond to there? Okay. Yep. Come on up one at a time.
So Bobby Deathless, 94 Plain Street. The 3 houses down from where the new development will be built. The first kind of, I have one question that I'd like to ask for Courtney. It's something that I brought up and I think it was, there was a lot of distraction around it when we just talked about it. The distance between Briar Hill and the new development. There are laws in the state and in the town about the distance between 2 streets that are not adjacent from each other. Right, it's supposed to be 500 feet in the town of Medfield, and it's 250 feet in the state. That the distance between those 2 streets that are not adjacent to each other, not directly across from each other, they're supposed to be at least 250 feet apart. We keep talking about the neighborhood, the neighbor's driveway. It's the Briar Hill, the distance between that street and where the new street would be is not a safe distance. And it's in the town laws and it's in the state laws that distance is not acceptable. So when I would assume, Courtney, the reason for that, if someone's traveling down the street and the car is at Briar Hill and it's at that thing and someone's pulling out at the new development, that you'd be distracted by that street, someone's pulling out, you don't have time for sight distance, you're distracted by that street and you run into the car that's pulling out at that distance. So Courtney, I would just like kind of ask.
Let's let her answer that then. You there, Courtney?
I am. Thank you. It's an excellent point. There are minimum offset distances required from Mass DOT as well as the town. Maria, I believe the DPW director was contacted, correct?
I believe so, and I think the issue here is that this is not a road, this is considered a driveway, so sadly, those standards are not technically applicable in that way that you're mentioning.
What is this? Courtney, do you know offhand, what is the state standard?
I do
Distance.
not, because it depends, because there's different rules for the different types of roadways. This, I believe, is a local roadway, so I'd have to look it up. I want to say it's a minimum of 100 or 150 feet, but I can get back to you on that.
Okay. Ian, did you have an answer on that?
Yeah, Courtney, in the 2009 Mass MUTC amendments,
Mhm.
25 feet between intersections and 50 feet away from or 25 between driveways and 50 between intersections, I believe is the numbers.
Okay, great. I'd want to look up also the Mass DOT PDPG, the project development design guideline, as well as the ASHTO for low volume roadways. There's a separate smaller green book. It's much thinner, which is nice. If you've ever seen the big version of the green book, it's very large. So we can take a look at all three of those sources and see what the minimum is.
My next point, I just wanted to make sure, it's kind of known that, the developers, when they bought this property, they were warned by the people selling the property to them that the development was meant to be built there before, and it was gonna turn down by the town. They warned them about that. They chose to, buy the property itself. Anyways, throughout this whole process, we kind of learned that, they mentioned the affordable housing for 5 minutes in the first meeting, and since then it's just about how they can make money, in my opinion. But the real thing that I want to, make sure that we know that this is going to be a long, long process. Abutters and me would like to know that it's going to be appealed. If it was, I trust the board and the town that with all the safety concerns and people's lives at risk and all the factors that we've been talking about in the meeting, that this is just an extremely dangerous situation, not even getting into the environmental and everything else. So,
Okay.
But I just know they, in their resumes, when I looked at, first meeting, looking at their resumes, everything on the resumes was just about money. So unfortunately, I have to talk about money. One of my best friends from college happens to be a lawyer for one of the biggest construction companies around, does $6.1 billion worth of business. He's looked at all the facts in this. He says that just go through the process with the town because he's confident that this won't go through, but he would be representing us when we appeal this process, if we had to appeal this, to help the abutters and make sure that this would not go through. And that's the intention of the abutters. So I just want to make sure that was.
Thank you. Just clarification, Paul, this is a driveway as opposed to a road, even though because it's the way this project is being presented.
Yes.
If it were a subdivision, it would be a road. Okay.
Mr. J, can I ask one more question? To Mr. Haverty?
Sure.
Paul, can you remind me, I'm curious about the threshold of who's eligible for an appeal, because I think that has changed recently, right?
So when a person aggrieved appeals the issuance of a comprehensive permit, they're required to show that they have standing. Previously, there was a presumption of standing for parties in interest, and that is anybody that is either a direct abutter or an abutter to an abutter within 300 feet. That presumption has been taken out of the statute. So now there is no longer a presumption, which means that if somebody wants to take an appeal of a comprehensive permit decision, special permit decision, variance decision, whatever, they have an obligation to provide affirmative evidence that they are harmed in a manner that is special and different than the rest of the community.
And do they have to be in a butter?
They don't have to be in a butter. They never had to be in a butter.
Okay.
Previously, you had to be in a butter or in a butter to an abutter within 300 feet to benefit from the presumption of standing. That presumption is no longer applicable. So every person that wants to take an appeal starts off, with the same ground, which is that they have the obligation to provide evidence to support their claim that they are
Individually harmed. But is there something in the new statute about posting a bond and?
There is. So there was actually a couple of iterations of that requirement. The initial iteration allowed a judge to impose a bond of up to $50,000. The Supreme Judicial Court heard an appeal on a bond decision. It made a determination that there had to be a showing of bad faith before that bond could be required. And recently, the legislature changed the statute again and eliminated that bad faith requirement.
Is that per person? So every agreed party would need to post a $50,000 bond?
Well, first of all, it's discretionary, so that a judge could look at it and say it just has to be 50,000. I don't know if a judge could look at it and say I'm going to require 50,000 per plaintiff. I think he possibly could.
So there's a bit of a burden on not the developer, but any aggrieved party if we were to grant the special permit,
Well, if you,
the comprehensive permit. It's
Well,
only
and
to
again,
appeal.
as you are aware, the board's options on a comprehensive permit application are to grant as requested, which never ever happens. You can grant with conditions, or you can deny.
Right.
If you grant with conditions, there may be a circumstance where the applicant appeals your decision to the Housing Appeals Committee because they believe that those conditions render the project uneconomic. And you may also have butters who want to appeal to the trial court, so that's either the Superior Court or the Land Court. In that circumstance, when that happens, then it's not unusual for that to happen. The abutter appeal is automatically stayed and does not move forward until the Housing Appeals Committee process is completed. And if the Housing Appeals Committee ultimately issues a decision that is different than what the board originally issued, then the abutter appeal is mooted and goes away.
So in
And
this,
then there would be a right to take a 30-day appeal of the Housing Appeals Committee decision.
right, because the Housing Appeals Committee is essentially administrative appeal at the first level.
Correct. And interested parties do have the right to seek intervention to the process at the Housing Appeals Committee
So in other words, neighbors
and participate,
can participate. But the town,
either as interveners or as interested persons.
but at the Housing Appeals Committee, if we were just to keep it simple, if we found the safety issues to be so compelling as to outweigh the regional need for affordable housing, and we were to deny the appeal, just hypothetically.
Then it's very unlikely that any neighbor would be allowed to intervene because this board would be essentially protecting their rights because it was a denial.
And procedurally, at the Housing Board of Appeals, the town then becomes the defendant, if you will.
Correct.
To justify the decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yes, and the board is going to have the burden of proof of showing that its decision was consistent with local needs as it relates to the regional need for affordable housing.
And if the board can't sustain that burden of proof,
Your decision is going to be overturned. Housing Appeals Committee is going to issue a decision ordering the board to issue a decision consistent with the Housing Appeals Committee's decision. And if the board doesn't within 30 days, then the Housing Appeals Committee's decision becomes the comprehensive permit.
so it's essentially, there's no remand here for further proceedings. It's, if we were to deny and it were appealed, then it's totally out of the hands of this board.
Other than to defend your decision at the Housing Appeals Committee.
Oh, you said that we have, if they were to uphold the developer's case in the Housing Appeals Court, they have 30 days to issue a decision consistent with the ruling, meaning we take their 6 basic conditions and that's it, or can we like?
You are not allowed to add additional conditions to the Housing Appeals Committee decision. There will be a provision in the decision that specifically states that.
So we take their stuff and put it in our.
They have,
letterhead,
yeah,
and that's
6 or 7 standard conditions that they impose on every decision that they issue. If you issue an approval with conditions
it. Mhm.
and that gets appealed and your decision gets overturned because, you know, some of the conditions rendered the project uneconomic, you still could have all of your other conditions be left in place. So the Housing Appeals Committee will take a look and say, all right, this condition's no good, that condition's no good, that condition's no good. But all these other conditions that you imposed are acceptable or within your authority, and therefore they will remain.
It's like a severability provision.
Almost.
So the Housing Appeals Committee is not really a hearing de novo.
It is a de novo hearing. Yes.
So do they start from the
But they look
beginning?
at your decision.
They
So-
simply look at the decision,
So what I will say is when I'm representing a
or do they take
developer
additional
and I'm
evidence?
filing an appeal onto the Housing Appeals Committee, I list each and every condition that my client objects to. And that might be because it adds cost to the project and contributes to rendering it economic, or it might be because there are conditions that are included that are outside the scope of the board and its authority to issue. Because this board is stepping into the shoes of all other local boards. So if you're trying to add a condition that is not something a different local board could issue in their decision, then you might, be outside your authority and could have that condition stricken, even if it doesn't render the project up.
So the Housing Appeals Committee, though, essentially doesn't take new evidence, simply reviews the,
No, it does. It's a de novo process, but
do they take? a
But
site
they're
visit?
reviewing your decision. So they're not gonna review things that aren't impacted by your decision.
Okay.
And again, if you have conditions in your decision, it's contingent on the applicant to specifically object to them. There's a provision in sort of the standard initial pleading, that lists objections to conditions, right? Every single condition that they object to, theoretically will be addressed as part of the hearing in front of the Housing Appeals Committee. But every single condition that is not objected to should, wind up, once the Housing Appeals Committee issues a decision, all of those additional conditions should be left in place.
Okay, what's the waivers you're talking about? The other waivers?
No, the waivers is a separate thing, and it's sort of very similar. In that, at the end of the day, the board is going to issue a number of decisions on waivers. If you're granting a comprehensive permit, presumption is going to be that you are granting certain waivers that have been requested, but there may be some that you determine should not be because of a local health or safety concern, or because you don't feel like, they are appropriate and don't add any economic impact to the project. HAC is going to review that, and it's going to say, okay, this condition was, so this waiver decision was acceptable, this one was acceptable. That one renders the project uneconomic if you don't grant it, so we're gonna order it granted. This one was outside the scope of the board's authority, so we're gonna grant that waiver as well. It's sort of the same process.
What standard of review is the Housing Appeals Committee using?
It's the same as I've discussed multiple times. They are going to look at whether there is an issue of local concern related to health, safety, open space, or other issue of local concern that outweighs the regional need for affordable housing. And the burden is going to be on the board to establish that there is a legitimate issue of local concern, and then to be able to show that it outweighs the regional need for affordable.
And how is the regional need for affordable housing measured? Is
Well, in
is
this
that
instance, you take.
somewhat arbitrary, or?
Well, you look at the subsidized housing inventory.
Yeah.
And Medfield is under 10%, which is why we're moving forward with this hearing application. There is a regional need for affordable housing because you don't meet any of the standards.
It's irrelevant how close we are to the 10%, right?
No, there is relevance to how close you are to the 10%. I can't tell you exactly how that plays out in real life because I've literally never seen a Housing Appeals Committee decision incorporating it.
Yeah.
But there is a provision in the HEC regulations that states that the balancing between the regional need for affordable housing and local concern will weigh heavier towards local concern the closer a municipality is to the 10%.
What are we at?
There's local concerns,
What are we at?
9.4. Is local concerns defined in this case as town of Medfield, or is it? Okay, so it doesn't matter where, Walpole or Norfolk, or I'm trying to think of all the abutting towns.
Well, I mean, I think you're looking at more the regional need for affordable housing and where they're at. And again, although it's technically, it's a regional planning statute. When the Housing Appeals Committee reviews, they're gonna take a look at where the town's SHI is. They're not really looking at surrounding towns. But the regional need for affordable housing is addressed in towns that are at less than 10%. So that even towns, that are over the 10%, will still have residents that actually need affordable housing. So when they're looking regionally, if you're under 10%, it doesn't just matter that there's, a need in Medfield. You are supposed to be also addressing needs from surrounding communities.
And I think we're like 24 units shy, affordable unit shy.
Yeah, it was like,
24
I think
units.
it's been 4. And this would add 6 towards that.
Yeah,
Thought the whole complex counted.
No, it's not
No,
rental,
they're
their
only-
ownership.
only Rental and rental. Ownership, you only count the actual affordable units.
Scratch that dumb question, please.
There's no dumb question. I'm living proof of that. Um,
Thank you, Paul, for providing that.
Yeah.
helpful
No, and
information.
I know we've kind of gone through that before, but it's worthwhile for the board and also for everyone else to be aware of what the process is. No, because that's the other thing, that's the balancing. I see you, I'll get to you. You know, safety concerns, need for affordable housing, local concerns, need for affordable housing. I mean, what, in your opinion, as the applicants, what is the purpose of chapter 40B?
In my opinion?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a way for towns to, provide housing to people that need housing, people that can't afford the housing that's in the town. We live in a state where housing prices have gotten out of control. And the people, the average person that might be married with one kid that works as a janitor in a public school or the wife is, secretary, they can't afford to live in this town. They can't afford to live in the town that I live in. So this qualifies them for, an 80% AMI, which gives them the ability to actually own a home and live in a house. And it's basically private money subsidizing, state housing for affordable candidates. That's how the system works. The private equity steps into construction and says, we'll build these homes, we'll sell them at market rate, and then we'll build 6 units that we won't make any money on. That's the way that government can actually have this program work without using taxpayers' dollars. It's private equity that's helping subsidize the state's affordable housing.
But by building 24 units on this site with all of the issues that we've talked about and, the ones we haven't even gotten into yet, does that really, in your opinion, do much to address any real or perceived need, local need for affordable housing? This is going to create 6 units of affordable housing. The other 18 are essentially market rate for profit. Any developer, anyone in business is entitled to make.
Well, we have to make a profit so that we can build the 6 homes. There's a detriment to building the homes. We figure that we're gonna lose 150 grand per home for the affordable houses because they're only gonna generate 300 change as income. It's gonna cost us more than that to build those homes. So I think that when you ask the question, do I think that this, has an impact? I think you're 24 units away from 10%. I think every unit has an impact. I mean, the alternative would be that we came to you with a rental proposal for, whatever it is, 89 bedrooms for a rental building, and you'd get all of those units, but that's not what's appropriate for this location in this town. Single family homes is what I think the town of Medfield in suburbs, it's better it's more applicable for that location. We were dealing with, a Cambridge or something like that, we'd do apartments. Or if we were doing it around a T station, like I've done 3 projects in my town around Greenbush. I'm going to do another one, and they're all rentals, so they get counted towards the SHI, but they're rentals, and it's around a train station. Trust me, the people in Situate didn't want that either. They did not want it. They thought it was the kiss of death, but it's come out. In my opinion, it's come out really nice, and it's a great little community. I'm not saying that's not appropriate for Medfield. That's why we're proposing this, and we have proposed this type of development in other towns that are not, surrounded by a train. So I think that what you have is a proposed development that's appropriate for the location, it's appropriate for the town, that does, privately subsidize affordable housing in the town of Medfield. I don't share your opinion about the stopping distances and the safety of this intersection, which, I know I'm the applicant here and I'm the applicant's attorney, but we're meeting the standards that are, the engineered standards that we're being asked to meet, and we meet those with some modifications to the shoulder. We exceed those. So I don't know what else we could do. I don't know what standard you want to hold us to as far as safety goes, other than just withdraw the project, and I'm sure everybody will cheer that, but that's not an option. I think, that-
You know, that
I think,
that
that-
arguably would be an option, and then a meeting in good faith with the neighbors and come up with something. They're gonna have to accept something more than one house being built on that lot, I would guess.
look, we tried, we all, I don't want to go back through history and go back over what we did, because we did that at another meeting. We went down the path
Yeah.
of a smaller development, and, this is the development that I think works. These house lots are good size, it gives kids a place to play. I don't agree with the gentleman that mentioned that there's no place. We have open spaces. Once we get to the site plan, you'll see that. It's surrounded by woods. It's a great neighborhood. So I think that this is I think it's a plus
Okay,
for that location. And I think that we're working around the existing road conditions, and we are meeting the standards that are required, exceeding them. Offering mitigation for traffic situations that don't have anything to do with this site or this project. We're offering the sign. I'm thrilled to hear about the radar, what do you call that sign? The radar detecting?
Radar feedback sign.
The radar feedback sign that was there, and we didn't know. I don't think HSH knew about it, but at the end of the day, so I thought about that. I'm like, well, first, it's 2,000 feet away. It's 0.38 something miles away from us. So I'm not sure how that would impact us. But then I thought, well, how much more appropriate could our traffic study be for our proposed conditions? Because we're proposing those signs in both directions. So our 35 mile an hour, 85 percentile is what it's going to be, right? I think it's going to be a lot less, because our signs are going to be much closer and have much more impact on the traffic speed at our intersection, not at Granite Street way down the road. So, but I'm impressed to hear that, the speaker did mention that, people slow down when they see the sign, and that's appropriate. That's what we're trying to, propose in this section. So, look, if we didn't have answers to these questions from professionals, we wouldn't be here. We have this project complies with what I believe is the requirements for an approved 40B. And we keep providing that information with, Courtney's input, and Steve's going to have more. He already has input into the civil and into the wetlands. And I think you're going to see that we're going to hit every pitch that you throw at us, because we've thought about these things in advance. So in any event, the simple answer is yes, I think it has a significant impact on affordable housing in the area. I think it allows the people that are in that 80% AMI to live in a neighborhood with other people that not like that, and not feel out of context. They blend it in with other children that are going to go to school together. I think I didn't think 40B was great when it came out, and I was just a young lawyer at the time, and I worried about it. The more I was asked to get involved in it and understand it, and the dynamics of it, I'm for it. I'm behind it 100%, because it uses private money to build affordable housing in Massachusetts. I think it's a brilliant idea. I wish other states did it, because I'd love to, expand my practice and hire other lawyers to do this kind of stuff, do this kind of work in other places. But right now, it's Massachusetts.
okay, thank you. We had a couple over here. You guys take it in order. We have 3 raised hands.
Alex Pfaff, 82 Plain Street, neighborhood of North. Latest plans show like the driveway, the new driveway is right next to my existing driveway. I have concerns about that. First of all, beyond the driveway is basically, we call it a driveway. It's a private road. I think the definition of a private road also depends on the amount of traffic going in and out. For such a huge traffic volume, like other roads, like Dwyer Road, for instance, is a road or a street, and seen as an intersection, where 204 cars going in and out is not seen as an intersection. It's very strange to me to understand. Dwyer Road has probably 10 cars a day going in and out. We have 204. They're right next to my driveway. For intersections and driveway, when you build a driveway, try to, if I would build a driveway and there would be intersections, I would have a minimum distance. I don't know what it is in Medfield by bylaw, 150 feet. So my question is, can someone build right on my driveway, a private road with 104 cars going? Number one. Number two, the bus situation. There's a strict rule in Medfield, everyone knows has kids in elementary school. Parents have to be at the bus every single time, at the bus for pickup and for bringing the kids. I don't know, I think it goes to 5th or 6th grade. Right now, my kids are the only kids, my son is next to my daughters right now. So there's a bus stop right in front of the driveway. This will create the biggest bus stop in Medfield. There are more than 20 to 30 kids probably at one point. You will need a second bus. The bus that is coming today is then more than that capacity. So there will be more buses. And the thing is, there are 48, let's say 34 houses, one kid, at 1.48 people at the bus stop, and the kids are at the street. I can manage my kids in the morning and they're alone. But if there are 24 kids playing at the street in the morning, but bus shelter is, it's right at the street. This is not a pre-existing condition. The street, the driveway is not a pre-existing condition. It's a new driveway. The old driveway is somewhere else. So I hear constantly pre-existing condition. It's not. The new situation is creating new risks that are not existing today. For the people that are living there, that will live there, and for me as a direct neighbor with my kids, and for all the other neighbors in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Terry Corbett. I'm at 92 Plain Street. So I just want to raise a concern about the fire chief signing off. Maria, you just mentioned that we've had a change in the fire chief. That the new fire chief said if the old fire chief, approved the previous plan. I believe that the previous fire chief came when it was a different plan. Remember in the beginning, it was the loop, 16 houses or 9 houses.
The approval they're referring to is to the length of the dead end road near driveways 2 and 3, and not the entryway itself. So the waiver, I believe, was for like inside the project near one of the internal loops.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that the new fire chief saw the new plan.
Yes, I've circulated the new plans. I can circulate them again, and I can get their approval as part of the record, and I can
Yeah.
put it in the drive.
Maria, I think that was a concern to me when you said that I think then the new fire chief needs to weigh in on the plan himself
Yes,
and some written conclusion.
yes, yes, and he
For
agreed
our
to it this week,
Okay,
so I'll get that.
Okay, great,
Thank you.
So, just a few other mentions, Ian mentioned that the ASH2 guidelines have not been updated to account for the new automobile standards like the anti-lock braking system. The ASH2 guidelines have also not been updated for the existing or the current distracted driving issues that exist nowadays. With, texting while driving. So those exist now too. And are not considered in the guidelines. One other comment that was made that, the kids have space around the house. There's land around the homes to be playing in. That land is conservation land. It's Walpole conservation land, and then the rest of it abuts our property. And the vernal pools, which exist right now, but will be obliterated once they build them. So nobody's talking about the vernal pools. I understand.
another issue for another night.
Yes, I understand that, but I just want to say that those are going to be obliterated by this road that they're proposing.
That was it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Mike Wither, 88 Plain Street. And I want to thank the chairman for reading my letter and
Yes,
addressing
thank
much of the issues that I raised in that letter, so I'm not going to rehash them.
Thank you.
There were some things that didn't get to, I just want to mention them. I also want to say that, I have a question maybe for Mr. Harry. You know, every time this developer wants to mitigate issues with this, what they sometimes call a driveway and sometimes call a road, I think, depending on how it fits their needs, they have to do something to the town's property. Is the town obliged to cooperate with them?
When you say they have to do something to
Well,
the
remove
town's
trees
property,
on the
are
city
you
or
talking
weed
about working within the existing right of way?
Yeah,
Yeah, so the applicant does have the right to request that the board grant a comprehensive permit that allows it to make the changes within the right of way. If we're talking about the need to trim back vegetation on a town-owned parcel that was not in fact a right of way, but it was either held by the Conservation Commission or somebody else, then that would require a town meeting vote, which the board cannot override as part of a 40B development. But when you're talking about working within an existing right of way, all of the permission locally necessary from the town meeting has already been obtained. So now it's just a matter of local approval, and the board sits as all other local boards and entities when it sits in a comprehensive permit application. So it
in
can grant
the
that.
case where they sit in favor of all these other departments, the Conservation Commission, the Board of Health, all this, they make choices for them. With the scenic road bylaw, it required a town meeting. How does the board know what the town wants to do or not want to do if they're not gonna have a town meeting?
Approval for actions under the scenic road bylaw do not require a town meeting. It's,
I
I'm
think
not
it's
sure what entity
designated
does.
as a scenic.
Planning
road
board
for
is
town
the
meeting
tree
approval.
warden.
Planning, the tree warden. Yeah, so it's a local board or official that actually has authority over whether to allow or not allow changes under
So
the
who is
scenic
that
road
in our
act.
town? Do we know who that is?
It's the planning board and the tree warden.
So
If it
is
involves
that
trees.
someone that you would consult with about their opinion about whether to remove trees?
Yeah, I think we're required under 40B to consult with
Okay.
the actual
So,
board.
I mean, when you get your 40B application in, you're supposed to distribute
Which we did.
to all of the local boards and officials. So they should already be on notice, but it certainly doesn't hurt to reach back out and say, listen, this is a question we're being asked to address as part of our process. It would be very helpful to get your input.
Because I think in this, probably in the original application, it didn't necessarily include removal of,
Well, that's true. There have been
Things in the
modifications
public way,
as we've gone on.
so that, because we did have initial input, and then we had the planning board chair at the last meeting.
So it's advisable to reach back out.
Thank you, thank you. So then they also use the term that if they remove vegetation, it's in perpetuity, okay? Who's gonna monitor that? Who's responsible to keep those, if they clear it, to keep it clear? Is it the town again? I mean, they've left the scene. They've
Well, we can
left
put
it.
that in, we can condition that, we can put that
To
in our
who?
condition
To who?
to the applicant.
But how do they enforce it once they
Well,
left the scene?
so there'll be a successor condominium association that would be
Yes,
responsible.
that scares me a lot, and I'll tell you why. Now you're gonna put a condominium association in charge, who I think has the right to change condominium rules and conditions. Who's gonna monitor?
They can't
Well,
change the
they-
conditions
So
of
it's
the
a
board's
condition.
decision.
But I'll tell you this, I saw when there's no oversight on the property, which is not gonna be necessarily, the town's not gonna have oversight. The previous owner topped the road when they didn't have permission to do it, right? It was a gravel road, they never went to the Conservation Commission, they didn't have, it got done anyway. I raised it, no one does anything about it. This developer took their machine and went to the drainage basin they're proposing where this new roadways can do, and did some digging, put a stake in the ground, marked 1824, which matches up to what's on the plot plan. So they went into the area without permission, yet they had to get permission to go into this second septic tank with certain conditions, but they chose to not pay attention to going into this no disturb zone. So it doesn't give me a lot of confidence. And you can shake your head, but how do you explain that? Can you ask this developer?
Well, that's not tonight's issue. Okay,
Well, it's a big concern of mine.
well, I understand it's a big concern, but we've got,
And I think we can condition it, and it's the condition in the comprehensive permit, that's a recorded decision, and any violation of any of those conditions is a zoning violation, so that then the building inspector can then,
The zoning enforcement.
yeah, the
officer,
zoning
right?
enforcement officer.
Well,
can then take
previously,
action.
the something classical drug, no one
Well,
was at that. I know.
We're not dealing with the previous owner. We're dealing with what's before us.
I just have one other last question.
Sure.
If this developer sells the permit, if they get approved of a comprehensive permit and they sell it to somebody else, which I know they have the right to do. Presume that new purchaser is then obligated to only do what the plan said, or can they make changes?
So the way the chapter 40B works, right, the board is going to issue a decision that's going to be based upon a set of preliminary plans, which are still in flux as they're in front of the board. And then at the end of the process, once a decision has been issued, the applicant is required to submit final plans. And those are the final detailed architectural plans, civil engineering plans. Those become the plans of record. Those the applicant cannot deviate from unless he comes back to the board and files a request for a modification.
Just like the original one.
Correct. So if there's a request for a modification, the board is required to first make a determination as to whether that modification is either substantial or insubstantial. If it's insubstantial, it doesn't have to take any action and it could just let the 15-day period slide and it becomes part of the new plans. If they determine it is substantial, then a new public hearing is noticed. The butters, get formal notice and we have a new hearing as to whether or not to allow that particular modification.
All right, one last comment. This
And just as a practical matter on that, Paul, we've always, if we make a determination that it's insubstantial, we do that just as administratively at a hearing.
Correct. So that doesn't
Or at a
require
meeting,
public notice, but it does get done at a public meeting.
Right.
In public.
It's done administratively rather than a formal
All
hearing.
right, one last comment. So this traffic control trailer that was there, the report never said anything about it. Now, either, I don't know who asked for it or didn't ask for it, but I think that if these professionals were writing a report, that should have been included. Why would you omit such a thing? Either they didn't know, or they subcontracted the job out and they never told them. Either way, it's an omission. And I'm asking the board to have them redo the speed issue without the traffic control, so we can get a realistic idea of what speed the cars are actually.
Yeah, I think that's something that Tetra Tech is suggesting as well, potentially. Were you aware that that was there?
No.
Yeah, no,
We got the same speed in both directions, I think,
okay,
34 and 35.
okay.
So the people. going
But you weren't
down-
aware that the traffic trailer was there?
No, they might have dropped it off after our guys were set up doing their thing. We have no idea.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all, just for the record.
But just for the record, we have the same speed going in both directions. I think it was 34 in one direction, 35 in the other direction, 38 the percentile. So the machine didn't have an impact on particular.
You have to know. That's it.
Excuse me? We don't make comments from back there?
I'm just
Please.
reporting, I'm reporting what the data was provided
Right,
to us.
so we have the
The board
data.
can do with it what it will, but we have the same speeds in both directions.
Right. I'm just simply asking if you were aware of the existence.
We
And you're not.
have no record of it at all. I mean,
Yes or no answer, and the answer is no, you
Nope.
know it was there. Good, thank you.
it's, this, over a third of a mile away. I don't think our guys.
You didn't know it was there.
Nope.
That's all I want to know. Thank you. Yes. Come on down.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Chairman and committee members. My name is Edie Kermay. I live at 24 Cole Drive. And Rosie, my dog, gets walked every day on Plain Street. I either myself or my husband. And then just for the record, I want to say I support affordable housing. So it's not about us, it's about the city. And I think I just want to clarify the road because there was a question of this gentleman. What's the difference between Kid Ridge and Granite? There's only, wherever you are on Plain Street, there's only two entrances. You either exit 27 or you go through Walpole. So it doesn't matter if it's like 100 feet or 200 feet, the volume of cars go by. And I guess these are my concerns that I've noticed when I walk my dog. Cars go really fast. A shared collision in Walpole is one of the big tow truck,
trucks,
thank you, comes through. It just peels down, right? There's during rush hour, you have cross traffic that comes through. And I know because we have a little Rosie and you have to really hold your tongue, right? And with my kids when they were younger, it's the same thing. They only stay in the neighborhood a little bit and then they want to explore. My other concern is when you're at the top of the hill, kind of where the Corbett's are going down. It's like, it doesn't matter what the speed limit is, people go super fast, right? And if anyone's walked down Plain Street, you look on the other side, you see a lot of nits and alcohol bottles. And I know that might be a separate issue, but it's a safety concern, right? Because different times of the day and at night, there's also the wetlands and it's foggy, right? And so you've got fast traffic. It gets more dangerous. Like lately, I've been either driving into town to walk or I go to Hospital Hill because of already, I think the volumes of traffic aren't safe. So I can't even imagine, I don't know, the statistic about having like 200, whatever you quoted, more traffic going out. That just seems like a safety risk. So that's why I'm concerned about. Yep, that's it. I mean,
All right.
that's my concern is the safety.
Thank you very much. Anyone still have their hand up in the chat, Maria?
Mr. Ramon Yarapa di Saya, hand raised. And I'm so sorry if I butchered that. Would you like me to promote?
Yes,
Ramon?
please. Someone smiling on the screen behind you.
I just tried to promote them. We just hit allow to talk with people. Oh, there we go.
We're muted, or
He's connecting to audio.
can you hear us?
Might still be connecting.
Well, you do the minutes.
Sure, it's easy to understand.
They remind me to get the minutes.
Still connecting. Ramon, you can also try dialing in using the phone number that's listed on the agenda, or you can type a question in the comments.
Can she hear us?
I don't know. Yeah, he came to our first hearing. I don't know if he can hear us.
Is there anyone else?
Nope, it's only him. Let me see if I can copy the agenda for him with the number.
Yes.
Can I just say one comment while we're waiting for this comment?
One up here though, so we can pick up on here,
Sure.
please.
Hi, thank you for being here.
Your name and address, please.
Yeah, Lisa Watts, 24 Plain Street. I think we've addressed a number of things tonight, and safety seems like a big theme, but I would just leave you with one number, and the number is 19. There's 19 houses on Plain Street today. Let that just sink in for a second. What you're proposing in terms matter is a road to a subdivision. Plain and simple. All the numbers keep changing, but there are 19 homes on Plain Street. So the safety is a real issue. I think that the volume, the buses, the kids, I've got 3 kids. You know, when all of the things we talked about, when you start adding the snowstorms and the ice, it just compounds all of it.
Thank you very much. Not working.
No, I send in the phone numbers he can call and the passcode. And again, if the audio's not working, you can send a chat message and I can read it.
Or she can save it for the next hearing.
May I just say one more comment?
On up here,
Okay. I
please.
just want to say,
I know you guys figured this out. Create the technical
No.
difficulty. And then we got one more and one more.
I don't have that much. All the things.
You know, you gotta watch these people.
I just make the comment I want to make is the response about new brakes and better cars and all that stuff. The reality is that if you look up some statistics in the last 10 years, there are more accidents and more collisions today than there were 10 years ago, even with all these improvements in the car because of the distractions that people have. And that's the reality.
Thank you. Oh, we're waiting here. So, Ian and
I think there's a person online that's trying to connect, but having difficulty.
you drove all the way up here for this.
That's why you're here in person.
That's why,
Imagine if-
that's why I really don't
Everybody
like
would love that.
if we're gonna do it online, do it online. But anyway, you still here, Courtney?
I am.
You am. Okay, and Ian's here.
Yes.
And you two have some back and forth to do. What I'm going to is when do we schedule the next meeting, but to give you guys enough time, but not too much time to get us some final numbers and have all of the concerns addressed so that we can get our recommendations from Tetra Tech as to where we stand.
We'll have it done.
Courtney, how long do you think, well, first you need to provide those,
Yeah.
so once you get that, so I guess we just
I need
talk
to-
about timing so we can figure out when we're gonna schedule the next meeting.
What do you guys think? 3 weeks?
So I'm gonna see
Well, I guess,
what
Ian, how soon can you
Ian and
provide
Courtney
what
sort of
Courtney
need to give
wants?
some time.
Courtney and I can regroup this week and get a list of what she needs, and then we'll work to provide that so that she has adequate time to review it. Write her wrap up her letter.
So what do you think's a reasonable time frame, Courtney?
If we get, final responses from the applicant in the next week, within 2 weeks after that, we should be able to issue a letter as long as there's nothing still outstanding. Steve, I don't know if you want to weigh in at all on schedule or not.
No, I think that works for me, for us. It sounds like traffic's gonna continue. Does the applicant have any idea when civil, comments would be coming back, or kind of?
Well, we can, it's up to the board if you want to do another traffic meeting and end it there and then move on to civil. But we've got your letters on civil and we're working on them already. And Deb, you'll have some comments back and you'll be able to address these issues. So I think we can keep it going that way and do it all next meeting.
Do both of them, to me, finish up traffic and start at June.
Yeah, I was hoping we could start civil tonight, but I understand we'll finish up traffic on the next meeting. So
Yeah.
maybe take 3 weeks, 4 weeks from now is fine. Seems to be the pattern here.
Yeah, we typically as a board meet once a month.
Yeah.
Anyway, so.
I would prefer every 2
Right.
weeks, but.
In this group, you've got the double duty this month,
Yeah.
or triple duty. Maria, I know you're doing multiple things, but
So
What's the
I'm
avail-
gone, guys, the 18th through like the 27th, so that's like that. 4-week period. And then we go July 4th, so,
18th to the 27th.
yeah.
What
I don't
about the 30th?
Yeah,
You're just back, but
yeah.
I know that feeling.
I'll be jet lagged, but that's okay.
I'm gonna be out that week.
Oh, no, once you hit Memorial Day until Labor Day, take the number of people involved and add 1 week for each person involved. 'Cause no one takes vacation the same.
When are you back, Steve?
I'm taking the 4th of July week off, so I should be back, that following Monday on the 7th. But again, if it's gonna be traffic related, maybe Courtney could just come. I don't know what her plan is for vacation, but yeah, if it's gonna be if it's gonna be a combined meeting, then it would have to be either the week before or the week after.
Figuring everything always takes longer than you think. Well, is the 7th available?
Yes, it's a planning board night, but I can schedule around that. The board wanted to meet then. That would work.
Is there inclination to continue with the in-person meetings at this point? I think this is more productive than, with all due apologies to the people that have to travel, but
Treated by the person who's still trying to log in. Yeah.
I think you should wait for that person to wait.
They might come next time.
Yeah.
yeah, I think. So July
7th,
July 7th. And obviously you'll submit your reports and Tetra Tech will submit theirs so that we'll have things in the interim. And I think we've been providing it to 1 or 2 of the abutters, right? Any information that we get so that everybody's kind of on the same page for the next meeting.
Yes, and I appreciate the abutters helping circulate those materials, and the Medfield Insider has been very helpful in posting updates as I received them, and there's also the Google Drive posted on the town website. So if you're curious, just email me. I'm happy to give you an update. It's
July 7th work for you guys?
It's okay, yeah. I'm with you, Bill. It's not a great day for me either, but I'm not.
It's not a great week for me, but
We can kick it out another week,
well,
We have the deadline. Right?
yeah, no, I don't wanna,
Or if you guys want to meet on the 23rd, I can just mull it in. I can just watch the video,
Would
so
we
I don't
want
delay it.
oh,
you
but
know?
then I get stuck on this thing, I know what you're trying to do.
No, but I'll mull it in. I'll watch the video so that I,
See what's going on.
just assume. We'd like to have you here.
Yeah.
Ian says he needs more time.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if we did the 30th, and we just did the traffic on the 30th, would you guys meet like some other time in the month of July, like go to July?
Yeah,
Just-
I'm
Yeah.
willing to, but
I like that
Steve-
idea.
Steve doesn't have to worry about the civil. I mean, I know it's an
Yeah,
extra.
we'll just do
finish
the,
traffic.
Finish the traffic and then we'll dig into civil at the
Yeah.
next meeting.
Yeah,
That's much better.
because I mean,
okay.
So
And maybe we could do the.
to me, traffic is kind of the threshold issue right now that we've got to get by.
What I'm thinking is, John, if we did the meeting on the 30th for traffic, maybe we could do like the meeting on civil, like on the 14th or the 20th, no, you know what I mean? Not a full month later.
Right.
Just keep up with it, do it a couple weeks later. Paul, you good?
The
You
work
do
with
that?
you, Paul?
I can do the 14th. I can do the 30th.
Yeah, that'll give us 2 weeks.
Cannot do the 21st.
That sound good?
Yeah, that works.
So we'll do the traffic on the 30th. Be a shorter meeting. Courtney, does that
Steve,
work?
Courtney, she
Yes,
good?
that works. Yep, thank you.
June 30th for traffic, July 14th for civil. Are we doing 6:30 again?
We can do 6, if you guys want to do 6, and I'll just make that one. 6 is
Yeah, 6
better
is
for
great.
everyone.
Yeah, I can be here whenever.
For both, okay.
What time?
6. So June 30th will be traffic. And then July 14th. We'll work toward. So. All right,
And those were both 6 PM you said, or 6:30?
yeah, 6 PM.
Thank you.
And we'll be meeting in person. I know it has to be hybrid. But we're proving if it's in person, it's good to be in person.
Preferably, yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, you wanna try it from one more time? or-
Okay,
We need to vote
So-
to continue there.
but,
Yeah, both.
okay, we hold it down. We're gonna wrap things up, but we have a couple of administrative things to do. We'll need to So
Just one process question.
identify yourself.
Grant Road, 92 Plain Street.
Yes.
You talked about tech and HSS or HSH getting together and answering their questions.
Yep.
Or anything. The letters submitted with questions, but there were a lot of questions raised tonight. How do those get addressed? They need to be followed up with letters in order for them to be addressed, or we raised a lot of questions and
But I think
captured in the minutes.
limiting it to the traffic issues, I think all of those, well, certainly they're captured in the recording and they'll be captured in the minutes of this meeting, and they've heard the questions, so I think all of those would be incorporated into their back
I
and
guess
forth.
one thing that,
If you want to follow up with a letter, maybe one letter from everyone that encapsulates all the questions that you want to be sure are addressed in the, for the traffic study, that would be helpful. And just send it to Maria.
Yeah, so if the board is requesting that those letter be addressed by tech, then I think
Yeah.
if you have a request from the board or addressed by the applicant.
Yeah, just to clarify, it has to be, your board's peer review consultant can only review studies that have been prepared by the applicant.
Right.
So that we would ask the applicant to address these questions. Once the applicant addresses them, then the peer review consultant.
there's one thing that's a lead time item is if there was a request to redo the traffic data. But so I don't know if that's something that we should talk about, whether we want to do that or not, that was a request by someone.
Which traffic?
That where there was a trail, that speed data, whether they felt that that was skewed somehow, and that, I mean, it was just a question that was raised, so we should decide what we want to do in terms of what action we want to take. And it could just be, no, let's just go with the existing data, or we can say review the data.
Well, I think part of what's already been requested by Tetra Tech is, for final confirmation of all of the figures. Is that what you're talking about?
Well,
Or are you talking about redoing?
yeah, the abutter was saying, I can't remember who spoke, that trailer that says slow down, that the data that was collected at the same time that trailer was there skewed the speed because there was already a traffic calming measure in place that, as you're going northbound, there was that traffic calming measure in place that they might have slowed down as they're approaching the site drive that was collecting the data for the speed.
Well, I think,
But I understand, Attorney Guard point that this was the same speed going both ways. So I just raised it as something.
well, I think,
I have a suggestion. Maybe if Ian and Courtney work it out and the two of them decide together that we need more.
that's what I was gonna say, Courtney.
If they decide no, then we won't.
need to-
We're happy to do it.
Okay.
If Courtney says, I want to see that, be redone because she thinks that somehow the information was skewed because of the location of the trailer, fine.
Then we'll get,
Yeah.
She may take the position that,
Yeah,
you know what, it was far away, I don't think
Yeah.
it's skewed the data.
Yeah.
So we're happy to do whatever she says before the meeting, so we'll have.
Yeah, only because that's a lead time item too, to,
Yeah,
get that all set up, so. But I'm,
You okay with that, Ian? Yeah, so.
Okay.
They work it out, we need to get to somebody, there to do the traffic.
Okay.
Data reviewed again, we'll do it.
okay,
But I don't want to do it if she says it's not an impact. I don't think it's.
no, I agree,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
get paid to do it.
okay.
Have it done. anything else.
I agree. Let the traffic experts.
Yeah.
Work.
Yeah. Happy to.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we need a motion to continue the hearing. You folks are free to leave, but please hold the conversation down so we can hear ourselves up here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty, we need a motion to continue the hearing to
Continue.
June 30th
Jared Gustafson making a motion
At 6 p.m.
at
to
6
continue
p.m.
the hearing to
At
June
the town hall.
30th at 6 p.m. at town.
Christine Barton seconds,
All in favor?
Jared Gustafson, aye.
Christine Barton, aye.
Yeah, great, make those aye. And Paul, do we,
No, wait until the 30th to do that. You can't continue beyond.
Who knows? We may. yeah, we may have-
If we have minutes, don't forget.
I will.
Is
We've picked July 14th as the next date, but we
We'll
don't,
vote on that.
we'll vote on that at the
Yeah.
next hearing, right? Okay,
Oh, and it's hybrid again? Or 30th?
Basically in person.
Yeah.
Hi,
Let anyone talk.
Okay,
Thank you very much,
All right,
everyone.
thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
all right.
Appreciate your patience.
Appreciate all of you.
Appreciate you putting up with me.
Eh,
You don't need me anymore, right?
we don't need to.
Never.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Other order of business
Minutes.
is the minutes from the 8th meeting.
Are we off recording or, oh, no, we're still recording.
Yep.
No, no
I
comments.
didn't have any issue.
I didn't either.
Jared Gusson making a motion to approve the minutes from April 8th.
Christine Barton seconds.
Jared Gusson, aye.
Christine Barton, aye.
Jack Nicholas, aye. Okay, so we've adjourned the hearing,
Close the
so
meeting.
now we can do a motion. Was there anything else, Maria? Nope.
To close the meeting.
No, we don't want to close, well, we
No,
adjourned it,
we
so.
wanna- No, we adjourned the hearing, now we have to close the
The
meeting,
meeting.
I'm not staying here all night.
so we can turn off the recording.
Yes,
Is that what we normally do? We close
Yes.
the meeting?
yes,
Yeah,
Yes.
it's different than the hearing.
like say
Okay.
vote to adjourn or motion to adjourn.
Adjourn or close?
No, just close
Yeah.
the meeting.
All right, Jared Gusson making a motion to close the meeting.
Christine Barton seconds.
Jared Gusson, aye.
Christine Barton, aye.
Jack Nicholas, aye. Bingo, the meeting is closed.
Okay.
I made that mistake last time. Is
Done.
We don't-
Mr. Secretary?
adjourn the hearing, adjourn and
Oh.
close is the same thing. So the hearing is still open.
Yeah,
hearing-
yeah, this meeting. Okay, close
That's
the
why
meeting.
we continued the hearing. Then we voted on the minutes while the meeting was still open.
My kids dying in school.
Well, this is a tough one, guys.
Yeah, that mowing rule, nice try there.
You don't look Irish.
Yeah, oh, if I just missed it, no big deal.
Yeah, yeah, I'll phone it in. I don't know, this one's full. Everybody's walked away. I just,
You know, it'll be interesting to see once Courtney gets the full data, when she does the analysis, what it comes out at. I mean, I think we have a hard argument at this point.